But yeah, Epstein's Fury, day 13, Strait of Hormuz. Still closed. U.S. Stratotanker down. APAC is mad. Freaky Friday, Burger Reich. Get in now. We got a lot to talk about, obviously. Why don't you get Norm Finkelstein on the podcast? It is too hard logistically. War's going great though, guys. I promise it's going great. Like, and anyone who says it's not going great is a liar. Okay, don't you ever put it in the news that the war is not doing great. America is cooking. I swear. I promise America's cooking. No naysayers allowed in here, right? Why don't you come to a uni at Montreal? I don't know, because I hate Montreal. No, it's just, there's no reason. Dow 50,000. The United States just joined the ICJ case to defend Israel. Hell yeah. On the wrong side of every story, baby. Recognize that if there is a crime happening around the world, we will be there defending said crime. Just for the sake of it, you know, just for the fun of it. The Dow. We'll be talking about the Dow. Nothing bad can happen. Only good can happen. But yeah, let's blast off and let's keep it going. Yeah, this is a pretty good blast off GIF as far as showcasing the RGC capabilities that were quite surprising. Caught us by surprise, caught us off guard. It's very cool that virtually every single day Trump is like, it's going really good, but we're also going to punish them extra hard. But also we're punishing them super hard already. Make no mistake, the punishing is happening every day. Corduroys, thank you for the 25. Get the subs, you know. Donald Trump keeps swapping back and forth on how good the war is going. And that's when you know the war is, you know, is being won already. Any day now. It can end any day now if you choose. If you choose to end it, it can end any day, and but we will end it. It won't be Iran. It won't be Iran ending it. We will end it whenever we feel like it. Whenever we're tired of bombing. That's right. That's right. Anyway, we're blasting off. We're blasting off. Get in now. Get in now. Your content keeps me sane as I go to school full time and work full time as we're in World War III. Thanks for your labor, Hassan. Of course. Try to do my best. Thank you for watching. The discourse on Twitter around the synagogue attack and the perpetrator's family being killed is so disappointing. Pro-Israel crowds are slandering his family members as Hezbollah fighters. It's even the kids in white, but the anti-Zionist crowd is also basically saying you get what you deserve to the temple because they support Zionism, literally just reverting to Israeli logic. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, that is a normal, it's an unfortunate but normal outcome of 2+ years of genocide and like people basically setting their boundaries. Trim your stash, bro? Fuck no. I'm keeping the beard for Cuba too, for Cuba. I haven't watched the new Louis Theroux yet. There's gonna be boots on the ground. Marines are gonna die for Israel. Hell yeah, brother. I'm gonna eat my crayons and I'm gonna die for Israel. And Israel high will be the last words coming out of my goddamn mouth. All right. Learn Spanish for Cuba, bro. I will not be able to learn Spanish in time. Let's be real. Bro wants to be Castro so bad. I mean, it would be an honor, but we'll talk about we'll talk about all the synagogue stuff as well. It's like, it's just, it's another one of those moments where like I've been saying for what, 3 years now that this is exactly, this is going to happen, and now it's happening, and people are still too busy yelling at all the people that warned that this could happen, while simultaneously overlooking the people that, you know, leaned in the opposite direction and fanned the flames. So yeah. What's up with the Ezra Klein fit? Hassan wearing the skin of his enemies? Yes. But Ezra Klein is not my enemy. He's my lover. Respond to S4A. He's always dissing you. What's S4A? I don't know what that is. Socialism for all? That seems great. I love socialism for all. I want socialism for all. That's great. I don't know who that is, but I like it. On YouTube, has some sobering analysis. Double Down News on YouTube. Yeah. Anyway, thoughts on Leon Kennedy replacing Kirsty Noem? Great. Finally. How was Castro good? I'm genuinely asking. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the man. Fidel Castro wasn't good. Fidel Castro was great. He was a great man. And so was Che Guevara. Okay? Some of the best. An unshakable will, commanding legions, and following through on their emancipatory needs. A wonderful human being. Okay? He's the GOAT. He's straight up the fucking GOAT. I wish we had more men like him. Unfortunately, we are utterly devoid of men like him. I steal his bit all the time. Journalist asks when Fidel Castro is in 1979, Fidel Castro came to New York City. Okay? This is after numerous assassination attempts had been made on his life by the American government, by the CIA. Journalists asked him, "Do you always wear that vest?" Fidel Castro said, "What vest?" Slowly unbuttoned his fatigues, showing his chest. Fidel Castro responded to the journalist. Journalist said, "Everybody says you wear a bulletproof vest." Fidel Castro said, "No." He said, "I wear a moral vest."
I will land in New York like this. I will land in New York like this.
Tengo un chaleco moral.
I have a moral one.
A moral
vest.
Es fuerte.
It's strong.
Ese me ha protegido siempre.
That one has protected me always.
Es uno de los más ha intentado matar, la verdad. Pero parece que tiene 7 vidas como el gato.
He has more lives than a cat. My goat, dude. My goats. They were slow cooking your ass on Dutch oven Twitter last night, Hasanabi. What is that even? What's Dutch oven Twitter? I saw a meme on Twitter the other day, and it reminded me of how some of y'all motherfuckers act. Okay? It was two dudes standing next to one another calling a Klansman a Nazi, and then the Klansman going, "No, you're the Nazi." And then the guy standing next to the dude who called the Klansmen Nazis going, "Oh shit, he really fucked you up, Unc." Worst kind of people on the planet, okay? Straight up worst kind of motherfuckers out. It just, the guy who's like supposed to be on your side, who immediately goes, "Oh man, that Nazi actually cooked you, bro." The instigators. Anyway. All right. He really races a Mogdu, Unc. Have you watched One Piece live action season 2? No, I have not. Explaining meme like a boomer, like my boomer dad. Shut the fuck up. All right, where were we? Okay, so we're blasted off. We're gonna get the situation monitoring right now. Lots going on in the freaking world. My friend survived so many U.S. attacks that a bulletproof vest would be a joke. He smoked a cigar with poison and survived because he had frozen the cigar beforehand, which neutralized the poison. Jewish Insider tagged you in a post today. No, that was yesterday, but we can talk about it again. Democratic divide over anti-Semitism erupts in clash between Third Way and Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, who has been an outspoken anti-Israel voice, says he stands with Hassan Piker, Graham Plattner, and Zohar Mamdani during the Michigan synagogue attack. Imagine calling yourself a leftist while siding with white supremacist pedophile-loving Nazi Nick Fuentes over Hassan Piker on the subject of anti-Zionism. Lamau, everyone here is clapping when they see your bravery. What is this? Oh, yeah, this is the type of shit that people say on here. Hassan is such an embarrassment that he managed to lose an argument to Nick Fuentes. Like, what's the argument here? Like, what's the argument that I lost to Nick Fuentes here? That, like, it is Jewish censorship? Is that what you're saying? So you just agree with Nick Fuentes then? Like, it's so dumb. I was never a Hassan guy before the war started, but I started following him once it started, and you've done a good job reporting on it, but I still struggle with some of your behavior, lol. You'll get there. Many people do this. Many people start off, what is this facial features, except for the excessive hair, are simply perfect. Why does he have such a good figure? Actually, with this body type, anything he wears looks stylish. What? Billy glazing me? He looks great in this outfit. Let's go. Yeah, this is the meme. This is the meme. This is it. This is, yeah. You guys are losers. Kill yourselves. Durr, you guys are losers. Dang, you gotta admit they low-key cooked you. This is my chat, bro. This is literally my chat like 90% of the time. Okay? 90% of the time, I'll be in the fucking trenches, okay, getting my ass dug out by like 500 different advocacy groups with moneyed interests, attacking me from like every fucking angle possible. Like you got AIPAC on the side calling me a fucking anti-Semitic neo-Nazi. You got like corporate interests also leaning in on the fight. You got Third Way from the Democratic Party also joining in on it. And then you still got dumb motherfuckers in this community being like, damn, the Third Way guys actually got you, bro. They got you though. They did. Why'd they get you, bro? Now I got people harassing me for defending you. Yes, bro. Stand strong. Stand loud and proud. What have I taught you? Your cause is just. Keep doing your fucking advocacy, okay? Enough with this like, oh, I don't want to come across like I'm, defending this guy too hard. It's fucking ridiculous. These guys are like very actively, they're so stupid. They very actively are trying to sever my ties with like, elected representatives. It's just not going to work. But like, it's so dumb. You don't have to 100% like the person, like everything a person does, to follow and agree with most of their commentary law. Nobody's perfect. And I think you love every single thing a person does. You're probably a little parasocial. Everyone starts somewhere, chatter. Brother, you're reading the funnies in the newspaper. We got to get you in a home. See, this is what I mean. This is what I mean. Another one of your enemies got outed. I mean, yeah, it was a matter of time. Come on, man. It also is unironically because like it's a little bit like the Zoran Mamdani method. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You just keep pressing on shit that you believe in, Do you like potato wedges? Yeah, I do. We'll do the new Cuba developments that are taking place. There's some positive developments about Cuba as well. But yeah, Gabby Deutsch writes this article. Following a Republican convening this week focused on combating right-wing anti-Semitism, a prominent moderate Democratic group urged fellow Democrats to follow the lead of Senator Ted Cruz in calling out anti-Semitism within their own party. We certainly believe that Cruz was right, and our side is a real anti-Semitism problem too, and that many Democrats are failing to face squarely. Matt Bennett, Executive Vice President for the Public Affairs at the center-left think tank Third Way, told Jewish Insider on Thursday. His comments came after Lily Cohen, a press advisor at the organization, shared a post highlighting Cruz's comments of the Republican Jewish Coalition, Confab, and said she would love to see more Dems calling out anti-Semitism on their side with the same fervor. Cohen specifically mentioned Maine Senate candidate Graham Plattner, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, and the far-left anti-Semitic streamer Hassan Piker. We do believe that Plattner has not remotely done enough to explain why he had a Nazi tattoo for 20 years, said Bennett. Cohen's comments inadvertently spotlighted and even ignited the growing feud between the Democratic Party over Israel and anti-Semitism. Representative Ro Khanna, progressive lawmakers who have been a frequent critic of Israel and pro-Israel activists in the U.S., responded to Cohen's post by saying he stands with Plattner, Mamdani, and even Piker. Don't let them Corbyn you. We're in a very different territory now. You can't Corbyn someone like myself for two reasons. One, because I have that dog in me. Corbyn, and I love the guy, did not. Okay? Corbyn, as a politician, was too afraid. In many circumstances, when he was yelled at unnecessarily, he was afraid to just be like, "The fuck are you talking about?" Right? I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. My job is to make people aware of what the fuck is up. And it's not even on just the Israel issue either. It's on many different issues. My job is to fucking educate people on how to best combat fascism. Right? I don't give a fuck if these guys are like, me. How dare you? Our job as a community is to become an unavoidable force, a force to be reckoned with, right? The reason why these guys are doing this kind of thing is because they're afraid that I now am combating the advocacy groups that they've created by directly talking to politicians and being like, don't listen to them. The people are on your side. That's what it is. That's what it is. Do you understand? Not to badmouth chat, but I think a lot of people get hung up on defending you as opposed to the ideas and principles you talk about. You're an adult. I've seen time and time again. You're more than capable of defending yourself. Not saying we shouldn't defend you when it's appropriate. I mean, there's a little bit of that's necessary too, in a more balanced and a more even keeled way, because like they want to soften the impact that I have, right? And if they can't tackle the arguments, they can't tackle the advocacy, they can't tackle the movement, so they tackle the person and chip away at my likability, I guess. They do the same thing with Zoran too. They do the same thing with many politicians. That's why they're doing it with Graham Plattner in a similar vein, where they're constantly talking about the tattoo, constantly bring up the tattoo, right, over and over again. Same with Zoran. Zoran has nothing that you could actually hit him on, but they keep trying to fucking hammer him and be like he's a terrorist. What is this? Row threw you under the bus? What? No, this is... Guys, he's a politician, okay? Yeah, he threw me under the bus so hard that he's going to fucking come on the broadcast like in a couple weeks again. Yeah, the Plattner clip of him dancing with a tattoo were in front of his Jewish in-laws. They never mentioned that part. Yeah, it's kind of funny and kind of stupid. But in any case, guys, be smart. Be smart, okay? The point is, this kind of attack doesn't work anymore. Hey, please do a call-out post with this guy. Hey, Hassan, do a call-out post with this politician. All I care about is drama. Please feed me. Yeah, there are a lot of people who want to do this kind of thing. They're well-intentioned, but they don't fully comprehend what's going on. It's like the same people that think like, well, Zoran threw you under the bus. Like when he said, when he literally said on the spot, like, I don't agree with his comments on 9/11, but I'm not going to apologize for going on his broadcast. It's part of the reason why Democrats keep losing, because they refuse to go on podcasts like this. Remember? And everyone was like, whoa, I can't believe it. It's like, yeah, bro, we literally fucking, I played a role in that sword falling operation. I can say it now because he won the election, so it doesn't fucking matter, right? If these Jewish advocacy groups were serious about protecting Jewish Americans, they would appreciate people who talk about Israel like you do, because this is the last line of defense against anti-Israel equals anti-Jew. I know. The problem is with the neocons in a party who blundered into Iraq, 20 years in Afghanistan, Libya, and Gaza, now support the Iran war. Out with the old guard. We need a new moral direction, Ro Khanna wrote, prompting Bennett to call on Khanna directly to do more to oppose anti-Semitism. We do not support the Iran war. We have publicly and strenuously opposed it, but we do stand against anti-Semitism. It would be good if you did too. When Khanna posted a message on X condemning Thursday's active shooter attack on a suburban Detroit synagogue, Jim Kessler, another senior third way official, offered a verbal eye roll. Yada, 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 Kessler wrote. Like, you're betraying the severity of the crisis at hand by literally talking about people who actively do advocate against anti-Semitism, actively do a lot to combat anti-Semitism, and then also showcasing like fucking verbal eye rolls as though they are sincere criticisms, right? If you're doing that, then like you clearly don't give a shit even about the synagogue attack, you know? If this is an opportunity for you to fucking complain about people who have never said anything anti-Semitic, like if this is an opportunity for you to fight your own internal Democratic Party war because you're so mad that the Democratic base is no longer on the side of fucking Israel, right? Then you're not sincere about combating anti-Semitism at all. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, let these guys chirp. They're chirping into the fucking wind, right? There is a version of this that took place as well with obviously the number one creator of anti-Semitism, the number one educator of anti-Semitism, perhaps the worst possible person tasked with combating anti-Semitism, Jonathan Greenblatt, where he went on CNN to talk about this, the synagogue attack that took place. Okay. And what did he do? He immediately said, why people are attacking Jewish people for the actions of the Jewish state. And it's like, bro, you are crazy. You are a crazy person. The ADL has been celebrating this war and despicably connecting it to Judaism from the start. Today is Purim, a holiday when we celebrate the thwarted plot to annihilate the Jewish people of Persia, modern-day Iran, and the courage of those who stood up against hatred. This year, Purim story feels closer than ever. The former Iranian regime supreme leader Ali Khamenei A man who openly and obsessively called for the destruction of the Jewish state of Israel and the death of Jews worldwide is a stark reminder of how the themes of this holiday echo in the present day. That's a crazy thing to say, big dog. Like 80% of Americans, whether they agree with it or not, think that or understand that this was like Israel's war and we're fighting Israel's war for them, right? So for you to turn around and be like, this is just like the Purim story is fucking crazy. Because guess what? You might not recognize it right now, but the overwhelming majority of Americans also don't like that we're fighting Israel's war. Like, I know people immediately rush to say, oh, this kind of like attack is, a false flag or whatever. But I don't think the synagogue one was a false flag. I think it was blowback. There's usually two types of domestic terror that takes place on U.S. soil. Blowback, which is real. It's like sincere, right? Or false flags. This one is blowback. It's an unconscionable act of violence. Luckily, none of the kids or no one in the synagogue was harmed. There is no justification for it as far as like the synagogue's own allegiance to the IDF, right? I'm not going to fucking sit here and be like, that's appropriate, right? It's not. It's ridiculous. And I will never fucking allow any commentary in that regard. Having said that, however, the connection between Judaism and Zionism, the connection between Jews and Israel is literally held together by Jewish institutions, including but not limited to this synagogue and many synagogues around the fucking country and every single Jewish advocacy group. You got to cut it out. You got to fucking sever those ties, man. It's crazy. And that still probably won't stop the explosive growth of anti-Semitism in this country. But it's ridiculous that like even at this point when Israel's popularity has completely fucking tanked and you still have these institutions, these Jewish institutions, these advocacy groups straight up saying, no, you don't understand. We love Israel. We love Israel. It's the only thing we care about. It's the only thing we focus on. Us Jews, we love Israel. We love everything that Israel does. And if you say anything about Israel, then fuck you. Like when you do that, of course people are going to be like, all right, bet.
So look.
Yeah. I mean, dude, even like Asen and Aaron Rupar is like cooking Jonathan Greenblatt's ass here, right? And we'll talk about Matt Stoller's interesting approach. Not interesting, but like correct approach to this. The guy's family was killed last week by Israel and he was taking revenge. That's wrong. Murder is wrong. But this is some uptick of anti-Semitism, is blowback. A lot of us have been saying that Israel is bad for the Jews. We reject that. We have to reject that country. American Jews used our leverage to promote and protect the state of Israel. That was a mistake, but we did it. Now we have to accept our responsibility for fixing the situation instead of whining about anti-Semitism. You guys trying to win this culture war nonsense isn't going to work. Matt Stoller is Jewish, and he's been popping off on this issue. You guys trying to win this culture war nonsense isn't going to work. Israel's deeply unpopular on both sides of the aisle for good reasons. It's over for the U.S.-Israel alliance. And it's crazy because, like, there are still motherfuckers out there that are like, no, it's actually the anti-Semitism of the left. This is the most anti-Semitic thing you could have said. The reason why people are attacking synagogues is because there are bad Jews out there who are saying Israel is not connected. Israel is disconnected from Jews. You're out of your fucking mind, brother. Your refusal to recognize the writing on the wall is unironically pushing people in this fucking direction. It's devastating. It's terrifying. It's ridiculous. Anyone genuinely worried about the prospect of anti-Semitism would immediately call for an end to the U.S.-Israel alliance. Otherwise, you're just a faker seeking ethno-nationalism. I watched Jim Cramer advocating for the wholesale slaughtering of Iranians so the stock market would go up. He then apologized for his co-anchor said, no need. Can we stop pretending the fear of anti-Semitism is some sort of moral cause? Our leaders regularly brag about their cruelty. Like, he goes a little bit harder than I would. I mean, he's Jewish, but he goes a little bit harder than I would in this situation. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like anti-Semitism is irrelevant or whatever, but I will make an honest and sober assessment about anti-Semitism in comparison to other like systemic versions of discrimination that we're seeing explode in real time, unfold in real time as a direct response to like Israel's popularity waning. But throughout history, when people were bigoted towards a group based on their country, that group has always tried to distance themselves. Japanese Americans during World War II worked as hard as possible to say we are not the Empire of Japan. American Jewish organizations seemingly decided to do the opposite and is suicidal. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. Like, I've been saying this for years at this point. It's literally like if Muslims were running around being like, excuse me, 9/11 is a radical act by the most honest actor of all time, Osama fucking bin Laden, and it was awesome. And also on top of that, you better not criticize Al-Qaeda because that's true Islam, except that never fucking happened. And you know what happened instead? Muslims kept saying, this is not us. And American media was like, fuck it. Actually, Muslims are saying this is us. Like there is not a single fucking mosque in this goddamn country that was like running around fundraising for ISIS. Can you imagine, dude? Can you imagine a fucking mosque just straight up fundraising for ISIS, like trying to offer material support to ISIS? It would be fucking it's illegal. It's utterly illegal. And yet you got synagogues doing it for the IDF. And yes, the unpopularity of Israel, even though Israel and ISIS are basically fucking two peas in a pod, right? But most people are obviously still oblivious to that reality, but they're not seeing Israel as a popular nation any longer. It's not. It's fallen out of fucking fashion. So when Jewish institutions do unironically try to combat all of the anti-Israel wave by being incredibly annoying, incredibly entitled, constantly demanding censorship, constantly demanding that people get fired, right? What the fuck do you think the people's reaction is going to be? They're going to be like, fuck you. And it's so crazy that like a lot of these guys, maybe it's because of my position, like being on the left flank of American politics, is crazy that so many of these dudes that spend a great deal of time, quote unquote, combating anti-Semitism when they're not actually combating anti-Semitism, but fomenting it by connecting Israel to Jews around the world and saying there is a monolithic Jewry from one side of their mouths, and then simultaneously saying, if you say there's a monolithic Jewry, it's anti-Semitic on the other side of their mouths, which is, by the way, literally the weird juxtaposition, the contradiction here is literally baked into the IHRA, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. It doesn't make any sense. On the one hand, they will correctly point to the idea of a monolithic Jewry as a deeply anti-Semitic conspiracy. On the other hand, they will say all Jews are monolithic, and if you fucking criticize Israel, you're criticizing the monolithic Jewry. You are no different than Nick Fuentes, brother. You're fucking insane. I've been warning about this non-fucking stop. The ADL, if it was actually earnest about its goals, equivalent for Muslims would be something like CARE. And CARE's primary job for the last 25 years is to say that whenever an act of terror is committed by a Muslim group, we as Muslims are horrified and do not condone it. The ADL has never done that and will never do the same for Israel. Of course, the ADL's primary job is to say it was awesome that Israel did an act of terrorism and it was for the Jews. It was for the Jews. It was awesome. And if you actually fucking are horrified by this act of terrorism that Israel commits with impunity, with unlimited tax-funded bombs, then you're a fucking anti-Semite and you hate Jews. You're a Jew hater. It's fucking insane. The dam was inevitably going to break, and now it's fucking broken, and these guys still don't see it. Yeah, let's see what Greenblatt had to say to Wolf Blitzer. By the way, Wolf Blitzer literally worked for AIPAC, okay? Like, love Wolf Blitzer, okay? That's my goat. That's my sexual panther. But, I mean, he straight up fucking worked for AIPAC. Jake Tapper is a massive Zionist. So is Dana Fash. It's crazy. So is fucking Maoist third worldist Van Jones, right? Like,
we're seeing Jewish people, the Jewish state, blamed for the war in the Middle East. That is wrong. It is wrong to scapegoat. It is wrong to hold Jewish people accountable for something you don't like on the other side of the planet. And we really need leaders on all sides in politics, running.
Like, bro, do you not understand what you're doing? You literally just said the Jewish state, okay? You can't say both of those things at the same fucking time. You can't say both of those things at the same damn time, okay? It's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. Especially because, like, normally I would say Americans are not very, Americans broadly are not like the smartest or the most woke when it comes to this shit. And it's like complex narratives or nuance is oftentimes lost in the conversation. That's why it's much easier for Americans to like oppose Israel by being anti-Semitic rather than oppose Israel on the grounds of anti-Zionism, on the grounds of anti-fascism, on the grounds of being anti-genocide, right? So oftentimes it's a little bit of both. However, when you do this argument, there is no nuance. You're literally saying, how dare Americans blame Jews for the actions of the Jewish state? What the fuck is the average American going to think when you say that on CNN? It's ridiculous.
For office, podcasters, to stop with the conspiracies, to stop with the accusations, and then tell us, but we oppose anti-Semitism. You don't get to say you're opposed to hate if you're trafficking in hateful conspiracy theories.
You're doing the hateful conspiracy, you fucking idiot. You're the one who's like, Israel lasered entire city blocks, leading to 750,000 Lebanese people evacuating from their homes. 750,000 people have been displaced in Lebanon, okay? Once again, thousands killed in the hands of Israel. And you personally connect that back to Jews. And then you also say it's actually good that this happened. And if you criticize this, then you hate the Jews. What the fuck are people supposed to think?
Everyone needs to dial down the rhetoric, to take a step back, and to start doing something to stop this epidemic before it gets even worse.
And it's continuing all over the country right now, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, at ADL, we focus on protecting...
Yes, I know he's talking about me. That's why he didn't mention me by name, but normally he does. But he's like, how can you say you oppose anti-Semitism? There is like not a single other person at my level in media right now that opposes Israel that will actively take the time out to also sever the ties of Jews in Israel. So there's only one guy he must be talking about. It's me. Maybe Tucker Carlson, who also will insincerely every now and then bring that up and be like, I don't hate the Jews. I love the Jews. You know, like he'll say stuff like that. That's it. It's like me and fucking Tucker Carlson. Everyone else at our size is straight up not doing that. They're literally all saying, yeah, it's the Jews. So there's not a lot of people who he could be referencing. Okay. No, he said podcasters. Like obviously Zohar Mamdani is a politician. That's different. I guess Mehdi Hassan too. He doesn't get a lot of, he doesn't eat it as hard as I do, though, by the ADL at least. Unc cooking a collar on this. Yeah, I mean, we all know where it's coming from, too. It's because Zionism is indefensible, especially liberal Zionism is indefensible. The juxtaposition is set in. The ideology itself is ultra-nationalist. The ideology itself is fascist. The ideology of Zionism is built around Jewish ethno-religious supremacy. It's built around the foundational principles of ethnic cleansing of all of the non-Jews in the region. And that's precisely what Israel has done. So it's not even like something you can deny. You can't just be like, oh, well, it's just an ideology. It's not, what's the problem here? I mean, they're acting out these desires, right? So because you can't fucking defend that, because it's an inherently contradictory concept, especially because Zionism still very much relies on unlimited support from liberal nations in the West, you just have one option, which is to constantly say, how dare you? You're anti-Semitic. You need to stop talking. And that shit used to work. 5 years ago, that shit used to work, especially because most people had not really thought about Israel at all or had a positive opinion of Israel in general. Yeah, no, they hate Mehdi Hassan too. They do call him a jihadist. They do. That's true. Actually, you know what? You're right. It literally is just people that are at our level in the media that are actively trying to fucking cut ties between Judaism and Zionism that consistently get fucking attacked. It is kind of crazy. Like, they do not spend this much time or effort on Nick Fuentes, bro. They do not even spend this much time and effort on Candace fucking Owens. It's just motherfuckers who literally are saying like, no, dude, no, it's not. This is something separate. Please stop. Sam Cedar doesn't get hit as hard because he's Jewish. I think that's part of the reason. But yeah, if you're Muslim and doing it, they're like, nope, you're a terrorist. You're a fucking Islamist fundamentalist.
And Zionism. That's the problem you have. You need to defend the idea that there can be no democracy in Israel, that it must be an exclusionary project, that it leads to expansion.
Yo, Unc, I don't know if the hairline pills are working anymore, my boy. It might be time to take a trip back home if possible. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? Look at my hairline. It's literally the same as it's been for the last decade at this point. Like, I literally started taking hairline pills in fucking 2017. You're a 54-month subscriber. You've been in here for the longest goddamn time. You know that that is literally unchanging, and you're trying to fucking piss me off.
And taking of other people's land and liberty and life. That's what you need to defend. Defend that. When you talk about anti-Semitism, what you're doing is putting Jewish lives in danger, because you're saying it's inherent in the Jew to support these policies that lead to apartheid. It's inherent in the Jew, you're saying. You're saying it's inherent in the Jew to be expansionist and kill unarmed civilians. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
And I resent it. And it endangers me and my family, and I don't appreciate it. So get the F out of here with that.
Widow's Peak looking like an island. I got the same thing going on. It's okay. Your mom loves my fucking adult hairline, okay? Suck my dick. Benjamin Netanyahu, I've promised you this war for more than 20 years. Now it's here, and we must rejoice. Jonathan Greenblatt, it's anti-Semitic to say this is Israel's war. If someone is pro-Palestinian, they should stop using that term. If it's an oxymoron, you can't be a liberal Nazi or a liberal fascist. Yeah, I mean, I've said it. Matt got some flack for this tweet, and I must say I do disagree with his takes here. I get the gist, and the thing QRT is dumb as fuck, but I think it's blatantly false and not constructive. Anti-Semitism can be a real thing, irrespective of the Zionism crowd. This feels overcorrective. There is no anti-Semitism on the left, none, and anti-Semitism isn't a meaningful political problem in America. Just stop it. I mean, I think he's being fucking aggro. It's just, here's what it is, okay? Of course, there's different versions of racism and bigotry in every aspect and in every facet of American political existence. This is the exact same way that people on the right cynically attacked Jeremy Corbyn. They were like, well, Labor has a anti-Semitism problem. Were there Labor Party members that had said things that could be anti-Semitic, could be considered anti-Semitic? Of course there were, right? But at the end of the day, you got one party that is like literally propping up statues of Nancy Astor. The conservatives at the time were doing this, right? In the Tory government. And the entirety of the media was slamming Jeremy Corbyn on anti-Semitism allegations. Nancy Astor famously said Hitler had the right idea about the Jews. Okay? Like, anti-Semitism exists in every facet of American politics. It's true. But you have to literally look at the one side that is like comprised entirely of Holocaust deniers, and the other side that's like, yeah, I think Jewish exceptionalism is out of control, or some people who have gotten to a point where they're like, you know what? Maybe it's fucked up that Jews are all over Hollywood. You know what I mean? That's not acceptable, but you got to fucking pick your battles at a certain point, right? Like, if one side is literally arguing on the basis of whether or not Jews are white any longer, because that's what the fucking right-wing side is major point of contention is, and the other side is saying, no, Jews are white, which is why we shouldn't be fucking treating like anti-Jewish sentiment in any way, shape, or form as though it's different than like being fucking anti-Italian or whatever. Like, you can have an issue with both of those statements, but like obviously one is a much more consequential problem than the other, right? Like I understand the thing that Matt is trying to say here. And yes, Corbyn wasn't even remotely anti-Semitic. Obviously, they were just like bullying him and successfully anchoring his campaign around that. But like, do you see what I mean? This isn't to say that anti-Semitism isn't an issue. It's a bigotry, of course, as all bigotries, and it is different than like anti-white versions of bigotry. Anti-whiteness is not like associated with any sort of like historic systemic discrimination. Anti-Semitism at least is associated with some very heinous historic discrimination against Jews. You don't have the same thing for like white people broadly, but anti-Semitism, for the average person, person's perspective in the United States of America in 2026 is seen as like, you know, white people crying. That's what it's seen as broadly, right? And depending on your outlook, Okay. What is this? You sound borderline anti-Semitic for Jews, especially you are Arab by birth. This proves exactly what I'm saying. This motherfucker literally went and said, hey, do you have a nuanced approach to anti-Semitism and systemic forms of discrimination, as your advocacy has been anchored around combating hatred of all different sorts for the past 13 fucking years? You sound Arab by birth. You just proved my fucking point. Like this right here, especially you are Arab by birth. One, I'm not even Arab. I'm Turkish. Doesn't matter, right? My name is Hassan. You're like, oh, Hassan, Muslim name. That's Arab. You're Arab. But like, especially, like the sentence modification there with especially, or the even the notion, if you were like, well, you're Turkish, of course you fucking hate Jews. That in and of itself is racist, you fucking moron. Your incapability of hearing what I'm saying and then immediately assuming that I must hold these opinions, not because this is something that I have studied, something that I have learned about, something that I care about, something that I've talked about tirelessly, endlessly. You just automatically go, Arab. Like, that's it. You have just proven my fucking point. You're being racist, dumbass. And you don't even recognize it because it's so normalized in your fucking circles. This is the point. Arab at birth is ironically a good way to describe how America's post 9/11 see everyone from North Africa to South Asia. Yes. In any case, that's the difference, right? And that wouldn't be as consequential. I'm Polish. My family saved Jews during World War II, and nowadays we support Palestine. Your rhetoric is childish. Look alive, guys. A Polish man is talking about bigotry while being bigoted. Unsurprising. Hassan's crash out to being called Arab is the most Turkish thing he's ever done. No, man. I don't give a fuck when people call me Arab or whatever. Obviously, I stand with all people, okay? I don't give a shit. I stand with all people that are marginalized. I will defend them. I will always offer a voice to the voiceless. It's ridiculous. My point is, he is the one who's grouping everyone together, and he's saying that, like, this is Arab behavior. There is a metric ton of stupidity associated with an analysis like that. But anyway, the other side of this, anti-Semitism isn't a meaningful problem in America. For the time being, anti-Semitism, as Jews are still considered a part of the white class, right, as a part of the in-group, hasn't gotten to that degree. But there's a long way for Jews to go from being treated like white people, which they are being treated as currently, to being treated like black people, which is the lowest version of like the highest degree of systemic discrimination, right? Because like the question for Jews now in the upcoming decade is like, are they white or are they not white? What they're actually going to be bracketed off in the interim is going to be like Muslims, okay? Probably not to the same severity, but you know, when you get knocked down a peg from whiteness, you go to like Muslim category, okay? There's still many different rungs to go through. No, it's not going to be the same severity, dude. I'm saying if you were, what do you mean? If it was up to Nick Fuentes, you think it wouldn't be the same severity? It would be. I'm saying like depending on how much they lean into, Jews are not white actually, and they're responsible for, with all their trickery, they're responsible for all of this stuff. You know, you could see that getting to a serious systemic form of discrimination. It's just not there yet, okay? Ben Lorber, as time goes on, Jewish anti-Zionism reveals itself not only as solidarity with the Palestinians, but also as an anti-Semitism strategy. We want out of this toxic dialectic, this terrible feedback loop between Israeli belligerence and Jewish precarity it incessantly engenders. The sick irony is that Zionism was supposed to make Jews safe, but building up a Jewish Sparta, as Arendt once called it, Hannah Arendt, at the crossroads of empire, did the opposite. I saw someone in Israel tweet, next time they give us a chosen land, we say no. It was the funniest Hebrew tweet I've ever fucking read. It's like, I guess after like the incessant, intense bombing campaigns, there was a dude in Israel who was like, you know what, guys? Next time someone offers us next time God offers us a chosen land, we say no. We reject it. Okay, I'm good. I'm good on this. I'm washing my hands of this shit. We'll just stay where we're at. Okay, it's not good. As Aaron once called at the crossroads of empire, did the opposite. Today, the Israeli war machine, fueled by siege mentality, feeds on the anti-Semitism birthed out of its entrails. Attacks on Jewish diaspora communities are morally inexcusable. They're also bound to occur when communal representatives proclaim our collective allegiance to a pariah state pursuing some of the greatest atrocities of a still young century. Exactly. You can't literally live stream the Holocaust and then say, it's awesome that it's happening and you should shut the fuck up. This is for the Jews. And then when people go, what the fuck? I guess it is for the Jews. I hate the Jews now. You go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, it's unacceptable and it's horrifying. I understand that. I've been trying to actively stop it to the best of my ability. But every fucking institution that's supposed to be tasked with combating anti-Semitism is dug deep inside of my asshole instead of also analyzing this very clear contradiction and trying to address it. And even for someone like myself, it gets a little insincere and it gets a little silly where on the one hand, we literally have children being fucking slaughtered en masse by Israel that calls itself the Jewish state, that wears the banner of the Star of David, that's propping up fucking menorahs and shit during Hanukkah in stolen Palestinian land and saying this is for the Jews. And then the Western, the home front propaganda also revolves around forcibly associating Jews with Israel. And then I have to sit here and consistently talk about like the dangers of anti-Semitism. It gets a little ridiculous after a while because, like, if you're looking at the actual actions of the fucking Nazi state and its advocacy and all of its envoys here in the Western world, I look insincere to the average person. It turns into a Latinx conversation, okay? I'm trying to be too woke. To the average person, they literally look at me and go, you're so woke, brother. We get it. Like, okay, sure. Okay. That's literally what it's turning into now. At least in the beginning, there was like more room to try and sever the ties of Israel and Jews, especially Jews in the Western world. But like 2 years after the fact, yeah, motherfuckers look at me like I'm saying Latinx anytime I talk about anti-Semitism and its dangers. Okay. That's what it's getting to. And that's really dangerous because, like, Latinx is a silly fucking moniker. It's ridiculous, right? But what that spells for American political discourse implies that people don't want to talk about anti-Semitism anymore. People don't give a fuck about anti-Semitism anymore because they see anti-Semitism as the primary vector to combat Israel. You don't want it to get there. And I've tried to stop that from happening, but these very same institutions that are supposed to be tasked with fucking combating this shit are more predisposed with yelling at me, calling me a fucking Nazi for calling Israel a Nazi, ironically enough. And they openly say it too. With respect, please stay out of the Latinx thing. Ain't no fucking way there's a defender of the utilization of the term Latinx in the big 226, okay? Ain't no fucking way. Ain't no fucking way we got woke one relics in here still. Dude, respect. Actually, you know what? I respect you so much. I respect you. I didn't even fuck with this in like 2018 when it was popping off. Okay? I didn't even fuck with this in 2018, right? When woke one was happening, I was like, I'm not doing that. That looks silly. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look like an out of touch white asshole who's like trying to be hyper woke, right? Hypersensitive. But to do that in 2026, I respect you. You were the biggest woke one warrior, and woke 2.0, you're still engaging in the most consequential advocacy. This Latinx veteran hid for 30 years in a forward operating base in the Philippine Islands, and he is still waging that war. He's stealing from the local Pinoy gang to make sure that he has the proper sustenance. He's still fighting the good fucking fight, okay? Respect. I learned about the history recently. It was a thing among Latino academics. Yeah, okay. So, heartwarming. Woke one chatter still wokes the old-fashioned way. Yeah. Anyway, the other bad dialectic, by the way, is between ultra-left apologists who hold the Jews wholly guilty for these attacks and the Zionist apologists who proclaim absolute innocence. Both shades of moralism are shoddy substitutes for political analysis. ADL-CO Jonathan Greenblatt to the Israeli-American Council. We as Jews need to realize we have a commitment to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. We need to reaffirm our relationship to the state of Israel. You cannot take Zionism out of Judaism. All Jews have a commitment to Israel, and you can't take Zionism out of Judaism, but you can't blame Jewish people for anything else Israel does. It's just a double standard, not a coherent position, and obviously contributes to the spread of anti-Semitism. Exactly. What pro-Israel people actually want is to be able to freely conflate Jews with Israel while making sure no one else can do so. It's a dangerous strategy, especially because it won't work. Bro, stop Swagapino stocks down because of army members. Oh, I saw this video. It's very funny.
My Instagram. Are you willing to die for Israel? Huh?
Dude, he's like, I saw this video. It's so cringe. It's so cringe. He has an opinion, but he cannot say it. Okay. Damage was caused to at least 3 sites in central Israel. All right. Let's get to 4 crew members killed in U.S. Stratotanker plane crash. They're saying it's a military refueling mishap. I got to go pee real quick.
This morning, CENTCOM confirming 4 of 6 U.S. crew
Another
members
$60 million assets destroyed. Another 4 American troops killed in the process. I thought it was 6, but they're saying 4. Hold on, I got to pee.
In Western Iraq, U.S. Central Command saying a KC-135 refueling plane like this one crashed during Operation Epic Fury. Unlike fighter jets, these planes aren't equipped with parachutes or ejection seats. CENTCOM saying the incident is not due to hostile fire or friendly fire, but the plane was involved in an incident with another aircraft which landed safely. This as Iran's new supreme leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, vowing to keep tightening the vice around the world's oil supply. In his first public statement, Khamenei, who's neither seen nor heard, insisting Iran will carry on its strategy, saying the leverage of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must certainly continue to be used. Overnight, President Trump asked if he believes the Ayatollah is alive.
I think he probably is. I think he's damaged, but I think he's probably alive in some form.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright saying the U.S. Navy won't be able to escort ships until at least the end of the month.
All of our military assets right now are focused on destroying Iran's offensive capabilities.
This as the conflict intensifying. Explosions ringing out throughout Tehran in videos seen online as thousands take to the street to mark International Quds Day in support of Palestinians. Smoke seen rising in the capital. And over 500 miles away in Lebanon, Israel now launching a growing assault against the militant Iranian-backed group Hezbollah, killing more than 680, according to local authorities. Our Matt Rivers in Beirut.
There was another airstrike right there. You could see the flash. And then eventually the explosion reaches us here on the rooftop.
The widening war taking its toll on civilians. UNICEF now saying more than 1,100 children have been reported.
What the fuck is this? I watched Top Gun Maverick and I assumed the Air Force was cool as fuck. God damn, chatter. You got cooked, huh? I just watched. Dude, I've been playing COD for years. I thought this shit was easy. What's happening? I thought this shit was a rap, brother. What is going on, Brody?
Injured or killed in the violence across this region.
Well, the Turkish ministry...
BBC is confirming that all 6 have died. All 6 crew members killed after U.S. refueling plane crashes in Iraq. By the way, they're doing the thing where they're like making it seem as though this was like a refueling incident potentially. The CENTCOM came out and said this was neither a hostile incident or a friendly fire incident, but a secret third thing. I suspect that it's actually, what are the fucking rockets that they're using? The 538 or 238 rockets or whatever. Like there's a very high likelihood that I don't think it was it could potentially have been Iraqi. It could have been P358. It could have been the Iraqi resistance forces utilizing some of the Iranian tech, but I don't know. What is Al-Quds Day? Al-Quds Day is a day of remembrance for Palestine. They already had it in Iran last night. For the record, before people say it was a mid-air collision while refueling, I mean, it could have happened. It could have been the case. But there's also a pretty decent likelihood that they are just hiding that this was a combat casualty. You know what I mean? Mid-air collision with a rocket. All 6 members of a U.S. military refueling aircraft crews have now been confirmed dead after a crash in western Iraq, U.S. Central Command has said. The U.S. initially said it located 4 of the deceased crew. It said neither hostile nor friendly fire were involved in the loss of the KC-135 aircraft on Thursday. The tanker had been involved in ongoing U.S. operations against Iran and was one of the 2 aircraft involved in the incident. The second landed safely. There was a photo. The reason why I say it's probably not a fucking midair collision is because the second Stratotanker had its vertical stabilizer clipped. So, or a horizontal stabilizer, is that what it's called? Or is it a vertical stabilizer? Like these things have like a big thing in the back. I'm doing a very bad job describing this when I have an aerospace and mechanical engineer brother. But yeah, here, this is a new photo. New photos show a U.S. KC-135 refueling aircraft involved in yesterday's mid-air collision over Iraq, landing at Ben Gurion Airport with major damage to his tail stabilizer. Yeah. Like, I don't know if this is a clipping. I don't know if this is a consequence of, like, clipping or what happened. Could have been that the other one was blown up and then it actually hit the other vertical stabilizer. Yeah, I mean, it's gone. The top of it is fucking gone. So I don't know how valid this is, you know? The other pilot cortisol spike, maybe. Just know that normally these refuelings happen at like 19,000 feet, super high altitude, which is, you know, out of reach of conventional small arms fire, obviously, and out of reach of like many of the weapons that the Iranians have and the Iraqi resistance forces have, except for they do have some rockets that can reach that height. So we'll find out soon enough. The Boeing manufactured aircraft are capable of refueling planes midair and play a major role in U.S. military operations. They've been playing an extensive role in this military operations because the runways that are in the vicinity of Iran have been fucking toasted. They've been cratered. They've been lasered. If you're wondering why Iran was attacking the Gulf, this is why. So they have to engage in refueling because planes are taken off from a much further distance than they normally would in these bombing operations. And because they can't actually fucking go back and sit on a runway nearby, they have to get refueling in these bombing campaigns. And it could be a consequence of like the Stratotankers pilots constantly being in the air and you know, being fatigued. Or it could have been that the Iraqi resistance, at least the IRGC claims it was the Iraqi resistance that, you know, clipped one of the two Stratotankers. CENTCOM said the incident occurred about 2 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, and the circumstances of the crash are now under investigation. A search and rescue operation was then launched to locate the remaining two crew members. U.S. Military Command Unit added that the identities of personnel who had been killed were being withheld for 24 hours so the next of kin could be notified. General Dan Kane, chair of the Joint U.S. Chiefs, told the news conference on Friday that the plane had crashed while the crew was on a combat mission. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth hailed the aircraft crew members as American heroes, stressing that their sacrifice will only recommit us to the resolve of this mission. I mean, they might as well come out and say, may their memory be a blessing. Am Israel Chai. They died for Israel. It's the holiest cause that we could possibly engage in. We are trying to bring about Armageddon. We are evangelical Zionists. Because that's kind of what's going on here. So it's got to be the shittiest position to be in if you're General Raising Cane. I mean, I have no sympathy for that fucking asshole anyway. I mean, he's a bloodthirsty monster. But it is fairly funny to think about from a truly, you know, amoral perspective. If you were to look at his like career, if you look at his ambitions, if you look at what he was able to conduct in Venezuela as a competent military operation, he very clearly didn't want any of this to happen, which is precisely the reason why in the buildup of the armada surrounding Iran, what did he do? He warned the administration in closed-door meetings. The administration clearly didn't listen to him, and instead listened to Benjamin Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham, the most compromised man in American politics. And then what did General Raising Cane do? He went to every media outlet he possibly could, and sang to them. Okay, he was like, "Listen. We don't have the missiles. We don't have the munitions to defend Israel. We don't have the munitions to even, you know, God forbid, entertain a war with China. This is a devastating idea. We shouldn't do this." Remember, he did that shit. That is genuinely a unique moment. That should have been a warning sign, a clear-cut warning sign. Okay? And now we're nearing boots on the ground territory here as, battle casualties keep going up, as the economic damage keeps rising, as the American defense munitions are getting depleted day in, day out, as seemingly the Iranian missile striking capabilities have not deteriorated to such a degree that they can't stop Iran from striking Israel. They can't stop Iran from striking the UAE and all these other Gulf regional actors as well. So where do we go? Where the fuck do we go? Meanwhile, our European allies are talking to Iran directly. France and Italy open talks with Iran in hope of securing safe Hormuz passage. Who controls the Strait of Hormuz? It's certainly not America, because if it was America, Italy and France would go to the United States of America. Breaking news, European countries, including France, have opened talks with Tehran, seeking to negotiate a deal to guarantee safe passage for their ships through the Strait of Hormuz, according to people briefed on the efforts. If I'm the Iranian leadership, I'm telling them, hey, don't talk to me, talk to the Americans. Forcibly decoupling America from Europe. Of course, European leadership are servile dogs, and they will probably still do the bidding of the Holy Empire, the greatest empire that has ever existed, the United States Empire, the Israeli Empire. So I don't think that they are going to follow through on whatever the Iranian demands are, but we'll see where that goes. What has to happen, and I've been saying this for the past 13 days since this fucking bombing campaign started, is a decoupling from Israel. America has to literally de-escalate and sever ties with Israel for this to happen. America has to retreat from its military bases in the region and start treating Iran as a sovereign actor that is a force to be reckoned with. Do the same thing that we did with the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen. This time, the damage is far more consequential to the global economy. The impact is far worse than what the Ansar Allah movement was able to do to American naval assets in their backyard. It's too late for that. I don't think it's ever too late. I think this is a face-saving operation. You either continue pushing further and further, you either keep pushing further and further, or you go into the direction of boots on the ground and American empire is dead as we know it, or you retreat and you engage in a strategic retreat that allows you to save face and allows you to maintain some of your force projection capabilities. But we are run by a bunch of philosemitic boomers who are both egomaniacal and genuinely think that Israel is the Jewish state that has like hypnosis powers and the Jewish space lasers or whatever the fuck, who are, magic money people who truly do believe that like Benjamin Netanyahu, when Benjamin Netanyahu comes in and says like, no, you got this, 4 days is all it'll take, they go, yeah, I believe it. They're still operating with 1967 mindset. It's fucking idiotic. I write, Vali Nasser, Professor John Hopkins, writes in Financial Times, another sober assessment coming from Financial Times, possibly one of the only media outlets, one of the only media operations that often is conducting these necessary sober assessments. Vali Nasser says, Iran is playing the long game. In war, geography matters as much as technology. Iran commands the entire northern shore of the Gulf, looming large over energy fields on its southern shore, and all that passes through its waters. Its Houthi allies are perched at the entrance of the Red Sea and along the passage of the Suez Canal. Iran is thus perfectly positioned to squeeze the global economy from both sides of the Arabian Peninsula. Meanwhile, Israel is trying to squeeze the other side, the entry point into the Suez Canal, the Red Sea entrance, with their own partition state, Somaliland. Meanwhile, there's also an escalation of tensions with al-Shabaab in Somalia that is really hurting the state of Somalia. So that's also another problem. That's also another problem that will have long-standing consequences. Of course, there are numerous other regional actors at play there. In Somalia, you got the Turks there. They have their bases there. You got American assets in there as well that are also fighting against al-Shabaab, trying to hold Somalia intact. Meanwhile, Israel is directly against the interests of America there as well, for the record, because they want to fucking destroy Somalia and have a base of operations that can fight against the Yemeni troop positions and the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen to control that entry point at least. It's completely fucking ridiculous. Anyway, those in command of Iran today are veterans of the asymmetric wars in Iraq and Syria. They are now applying the same strategy to fighting the U.S. on the battlefield of the global economy. Drones, short-range missiles, and mine-setting tankers and ports on fire can have the same effects as IEDs had in Iraq, only with greater impact, disrupting global supply chains and sending oil prices higher. Iran could sustain its counteroffensive more easily and for far longer. Furthermore, a ceasefire alone will not lift the shadow of risk that Iran has imposed over the Gulf, which is now experiencing its nightmare scenario. That is why Iranian leaders are saying they will not accept the ceasefire until Washington fully grasps the global economic cost of waging this war. Businesses, investors, and tourists may not return to the Gulf states if they assume that war could resume again. Unless the U.S. is prepared to invade Iran, remove the Islamic Republic's leaders, and then stay there to ensure stability and security, confidence in the Gulf will only return if the U.S. and Iran arrive at a durable ceasefire. And if America actually goes up the escalation ladder and falls into this trap and tries to do a half-assed military campaign, boots on the ground in Iran, it's over. I cannot stress this enough. It's fucking over. They have no way of establishing a supply chain with the front lines at that point. What are you going to do? Keep fucking airdropping troops? You would literally need a force that is the size of like the World War II Allied forces to be able to successfully invade through paratroopers a country with the topography of Iran. Like, this is what their forces are designed for. They have defensive forces. They do not have offensive forces. That's precisely the reason why their striking capabilities are designed to hit maximum 2,000 kilometers. Okay? Every single thing that Iran has built and designed has been for this moment, being able to shut off the Strait of Hormuz and being able to defend their own lands. Okay? There are choke points after choke points inside of the mountainous terrain that I assume Iranian weapons are directly pointing at. Why do you doubt our warfighter? Yeah. Our warfighters, dude, our anti-woke militias will take over Iran in a moment's notice. Yeah, well, if this is a fucking game of who's less woke, Iran kind of beats out our forces too, don't you think? I mean, think about the IRGC. It's the most competent anti-woke military force on the planet. One of the most competent and most anti-woke military forces on the planet. So I guess they have us beat on that fucking front too, when you think about it. If this is a battle of woke for woke, Iran wins on that front too. Except they're pro-trans, but that's it. Remember when I talked about Iran being maybe a little too pro-trans as a joke, but like Iran being pro-trans in general? And everybody got mad at me because they didn't know that that was the case, that like you can get gender confirmation surgery in Iran, but then it goes a little too far and they actually do forcible gender reassignment in Iran to people who were caught having gay sex. That's true for people who don't know. It's pro-trans out of homophobia. They went too woke that they flipped on the other side. Isn't China and Japan the same? No. What? No. Not even a little bit, dude. What the fuck? There is no forcible gender surgeries taking place in neither Japan nor China if someone is outed as being gay. What the fuck are you talking about? That is a incredibly cruel and incredibly torturous medical procedure that is totally unacceptable. It's torture. It's fucking crazy. But yes, they do unironically do transgender for everybody.
I'm gay and Lebanese.
No, we like gender affirmation. We like gender confirmation. We don't like forcible gender reassignment surgeries. That's psychotic. Anyway, Shiites in Iran are already starting to recreate evangelical megachurch sermons from first principles. No, they've been doing that for longer than fucking the evangelicals have been doing it. The anti-woke alliance will break the MAGA base, but it's true. They do have, and their megachurch sermons are far cooler than ours. I'll be honest, like the chest thumping and the fucking and the singing and all of that. That shit's fire. Iran is a desert, mountainous, no supply lines, guarantee certain death. Yeah. Anyway, let's finish this. Iran says it will only accept a ceasefire with international guarantees for its sovereignty, which would probably mean a direct role for Russia and China. It may also demand compensation for war damages and a verifiable ceasefire in Lebanon. The U.S. would then have to agree to some form of the nuclear deal it left on the table in Geneva in February and commit to lifting sanctions. Iran's leaders entered this war with the goal of ensuring it will be the last one. Either it breaks them or radically changes the country's circumstances. They are betting on surviving long enough and squeezing the global economy hard enough to realize that goal. That's it. And I've been saying that, and they do have the capability to withstand this. In the absence of boots on the ground, which would be a devastating predicament for America. Remember, America was barely able to do this to Iraq, and Iran is not Iraq. You can't go to the fucking IRGC generals and give them bags of cash to be like, stand down. Stand down. Create confusion. Because that's what we did in Iraq, for the record. Okay? A much more unstable government. You can't do that with, okay, when people say 3,000 Marines are sent, I don't think you understand the troop deployment necessary to invade a country with 93 million people with like 10 million armed combatants, okay? It's like, what do you mean? You're basically feeding American Marines to the troop explosion machine, okay? Like, that's not a thing. That's just sacrifice. You might as well call it ritualistic sacrifice. Because of drones, there's very little the U.S. can do to force open the strait. They don't need missiles or mines. They can send $10,000. Well, no, it turns out they're $7,000 drones, by the way. They're not even $20,000 drones. They're not even $10,000 drones. They're $7,000 drones, which expose a $500 million oil tanker in 30 seconds. Exactly. Like, for the record, when people think like, oh, these guys are just like flexing, they're talking a big game. They're not. They are openly stating, bring your troops into Iran. They will come in vertically. They will leave horizontally. Okay. This is from Hezbollah. Chatter's logs are fucking disgusting. What is this? Liberals love to cry about the mental health of criminals. Don't you all? Would the English king get cinema interview the same way Zelensky did when he comes? Drumpf. I don't know what this person is saying. You need hundreds of thousands of troops, but you also need to establish a supply line to feed the front lines. You cannot take the Iranian coastline and Karg Island with 2,000 Marines, okay? They will get fucking slaughtered. You definitely can't take the rest of Iran, but let's say the goal here is to start the operation in a limited fashion, okay? You have Karg Island. Karg Island is like where 90% of the Iranian oil passes through, right? But you can't just take Karg Island. You have to also take the Iranian coastline, because if you don't secure the Iranian coastline, you can't secure Karg Island. So what they're trying to do, yeah, VDV at Hostomel moment is exactly what they're trying to do here, but it's worse. It's even worse because there's no fucking land bridge either. So there's no established supply line, even from a logical standpoint. Like, there's no theoretical supply line that you can establish to feed the fucking troops in the front line for the Iranian coastline. There's nothing. They can barely hold together. They can barely hold together a bombing campaign. They've taken casualties with their aerial bombing campaign. They haven't even established full-blown aerial superiority over Iranian territory. I'm not even talking about the eastern Iranian territory where they have no air superiority whatsoever. They haven't even started to bomb the eastern countryside. They're simply going after the western countryside. And the reason why they're doing that is because I suspect they're trying to deteriorate the Iranian munitions facilities and their missile launching capabilities from the western flank, because that's the side that's like bombing Israel. That's the side that's like blowing up the military bases. That's the side that's the most damaging for a potential American military incursion. Okay. But like, the way that this will start, the way that this is going to start is with a potential failed seizure over the Iranian coastline. Here, I'll just show you a map of Iran again. Iran topographic map. lot of maps being used on this broadcast. This is fantastic for all of my map autists and my missile autists. You're all fucking loving this shit. Okay. Here, hold on. Here, let's show you Karg Island. Okay. This is where Karg Island is. Okay. It's this massive oil refinery facility and oil transfer facility. 90% of all Iranian oil passes through Karg Island. Okay. It's right off the coastline of Iran. Now, this is a topographical map of Iran. I don't know why it won't just like open the actual fucking image. Yeah, it's so fucking annoying. But the thing is, in order to secure Karg Island, if you want to invade Karg Island, you have to literally, one, destroy all of the launching capabilities that exist off of the mountainside, okay? You need to first destroy all the launching capabilities. You need to secure the bases in Iraq and Kuwait especially, and maybe even Saudi Arabia. You haven't done so. Then you need to make sure that you have full-blown air superiority over the western coast of Iran. You haven't done that either. Then on top of that, you need to be able to deploy hundreds of thousands of troops potentially, or at least like, I don't know, fucking 50,000 troops, or I don't know what the actual number is, but you need a shit ton more troops than 2,000 fucking Marines, okay? 2,000 of our best Marines. Not going to work, okay? It's not going to work. You need a fuck ton more military buildup. You haven't established any fucking direct supply lines with that front line if you were to do such a campaign. So what are you going to do? Paratroopers? You're going to fucking you're going to drop ship our paratroopers into fucking Karg Island so they get what? Slaughtered? You have to also secure this coastline. You have to literally deploy troops across this coastline to ensure that you can protect the entire region. Okay? So if you don't have any assurances that you've been able to successfully cause attrition on the Iranian missile capabilities, Iranian drone striking capabilities in this dense fucking mountainous region, okay? And they're still going to keep popping their fucking heads out and deploy $10,000 lawnmowers that can take out billion-dollar pieces of equipment if they choose to do so. What the fuck do you think is going to happen to your troops at that point? You're going to see a lot of fucking drone compilations, and just like you see in Ukraine, but significantly worse. This time it won't be Russians in the grayest footage you've ever seen begging for their lives in their last moments. It'll be American soldiers. It'll be your fucking neighbors. It'll be your family members. Ground war in Iran would be hell, says Cato Institute. Military history teaches us that air power alone is insufficient to achieve the kinds of aims that Trumpians have set for themselves. Once again, it has never happened and it will never happen. You will never decapitate and successfully cause instability in a country through air superiority alone. We don't even have full-blown air superiority, not even over Western Iran, for the record. When Americans tell you we have completely created air superiority in the Western territories, they're lying, okay? They still have denial systems that they bring out periodically, and that's precisely the reason why you still hear about like MQ-9 Reaper drones falling out of the air, for example. How does that happen? Why are the Israeli drones falling out of the sky? How is that happening? It's because they still have denial systems that they're bringing out periodically and shooting at the drones that are loitering over Western Iranian territory, both to engage in surveillance and sometimes engage in direct strikes. There's no will amongst the military to do this. There is no capabilities that we have to do this. There is a reason why we didn't do it for 47 fucking years. Okay? There's a reason. Because this was going to happen inevitably. So every general was like, why the fuck would we do this? This is so psychotic. It's so stupid. You needed someone psychotic enough. You needed someone psychotic enough like Donald Trump and dumb enough like Donald Trump to believe it. Okay? to believe in the Israeli intelligence, to believe in the might of the Israeli Air Force and the superiority of Israeli espionage, to fucking lean into something so stupid. It's unfucking believable. 2,000 troops is so funny. Oh, brother, we're sending our best Marines over there. You don't understand. Okay, first, the sheer size of the ground force would be staggering. Any serious American invasion of Iran would likely rival or exceed the scale of Vietnam or the 1991 Gulf War, making it the largest U.S. military undertaking since the Second World War. Iran's landmass and population size alone would prove a daunting hurdle. The country is nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, and its population is more than 3 times larger. Iran's terrain is, in a word, punishing. The topography is dominated by mountains, which by some figures constitute half of its territory. Unlike most nations, Iran's urban centers are located inland, nestled amid mountains, and buffered by uninhabitable deserts to the east and the south. This combination, here it is. Just want you to understand again. Like any parts of Iran that don't have these crazy fucking mountains is desert, okay? What do? How do you deal with that? You seem to be radically underestimating how hard each of the 2,000 troops are. Yeah, that's what's happening. Go home, Hassan. I am home, dumbass. The fuck? Fuck. Anyway, unlike most nations, Iran's urban centers are located inland, nestled amid mountains. This combination of Iran's built and natural environments would mean that U.S. forces would have to advance through numerous bottlenecks to even reach Iran's military and population centers. And while Iran is in the middle of the pack in terms of population density, its capital, Tehran, teams with more than 15 million souls. A fight to capture the city against a determined enemy would amount to the largest urban battle in American military history. The idea of capturing and pacifying Tehran alone illustrates the near impossibility of such an invasion. Using the troop density employed in 2004 battle for Fallujah, Iraq, as a point of reference, suggests that it would require more than 600,000 U.S. soldiers, roughly the size of the U.S. deployment during the Vietnam War, hence perhaps leave its talk of reinstituting the draft. Looking at the invasion of Iraq in 2003, a similar invasion of Iran, given its population size, would require as many as 1.6 million troops. These estimates appear more daunting still when compared to the actual force structure of the U.S. military, which boasts about 2.1 million members in active service, reserves, and the National Guard. Of these, only about 20% are combat troops. Simply put, committing 1.6 million personnel would mean using roughly 3/4 of the entire U.S. military, including combat forces America simply doesn't have. Such a war couldn't be undertaken without massive mobilization and a fundamental reordering of American global commitments, requiring the diversion of forces from Europe, Asia, and elsewhere. An invasion of Iran would therefore impel the United States to confront something it has long sought to avoid: hard choice about limits of its global military footprint. Summing up the scale of the prospect, the columnist Max Boot, not exactly known for his pacifism, described an invasion of Iran as the mother of all quagmires. This is why I say an invasion of Iran would lead to the death of the American empire. Okay? If you think the last 13 days have shown American military might and force projection capabilities to be nothing but a paper tiger, American troops getting killed by the tens of thousands would literally destroy America. It would be worse than the USSR's invasion of Afghanistan, which played a formative role in the death of the USSR. Okay? You can say, Gangi, we got contingency plans upon contingency plans. You have no contingency plans, especially because, guess what? Once your munitions are depleted, you have no way of restocking them. Because if China were to turn off the trade faucet and implement export controls for raw earth, as Donald Trump likes to call it, rare earth minerals, and magnets that are necessary for the American defense industry, you're fucked. Now you got no bullets. Okay? You ain't got no fucking bullets at that point. What do you have? You have no supply chains, no way to fucking feed the military in the front lines, not even enough troops to even launch a ground invasion. And then you're out of bullets, and the only country that is allowing you to even make new bullets and make new machines and make new fucking assets and make new munitions is China. China could just as easily turn around and say, you guys have destabilized the world too much, and in the interest of stability, we're shutting off your faucet. We're shutting off your manufacturing capabilities starting tomorrow. What do you have then? What are you going to say slurs at the Iranians? Is that how you're going to defeat the Iranian military? You're going to anti-woke them? Don't worry. Our hardest dicked Marines are going to be fucking saying, you fucking jihadi, you sand N-word, and then they're going to perish. Not that it matters, because all of the worst case scenarios that I keep describing to you guys are worst case scenarios that many military generals don't want to even contend with in these rooms, because all of the fucking generals that would have told Donald Trump, you're a fucking idiot, stop this, have been fired. So they don't even they don't even explain these issues to Trump, in my opinion. I suspect that they're not even doing that. Plus, you don't even normally want to do that because, you have the same like career ambitions as anybody else. So you don't want to tell you don't want to tell people up the fucking ranks that this shit is not going to work. It's going to destroy the country. Then comes the next obvious problem, fighting the war. While Iran's military would likely lack air superiority and remains less technologically advanced than that of the United States, the Islamic republics shouldn't be taken lightly. Before the outbreak of the current war, the country's regular armed forces were estimated at roughly 420,000 personnel. Iran's more ideologically committed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps numbered around 190,000, backed by a militia force known as Basij of more than 600,000. How much of this force could ultimately resist an invasion is speculative. Some may defect and others removed from the battlefield before they can fight. But what is clear is that Iran would likely adhere to its long-standing doctrine of defense in depth. Drawing on lessons from the Iran-Iraq War, Iranian planners adopted what they call a mosaic strategy, which they've already implemented. Decentralized command structures combined with a willingness to trade territory to wear down an invading force through attrition. Supporting this strategy would be Iran's still significant arsenal of rockets and drones. These have already surprised U.S. military officials in recent engagements and could prove even more dangerous on Iranian soil, where shorter flight times would give the Americans far less warning. Iranian militias in the region, too, are battle-hardened, versed in irregular warfare, and in many cases acquainted with American tactics. I've explained this to you over and over again as well. The reason why they're very capable is because they've been fighting ISIS in the region for the last 20 fucking years. Oftentimes alongside the American forces, by the way, ironically enough. Pentagon to deploy another 5,000 additional service members. Yeah, I mean, this is literally what's going on, dude. Just... It's the meme, is a Twitter meme of like the guy who keeps feeding stray kittens to the coyotes in his backyard, Just don't worry. We'll put 5,000 of our hardest dicked men and women into the Iranian meat grinder. It'll be fine. This kind of troop deployment signals one thing and one thing only. Donald Trump is not backing away because he's an absolute fucking moron. Oh my God, this is so devastating. U.S. forces would likely find themselves fighting a determined asymmetric opponent, armed with effective weapons and operating on difficult terrain. For a military that has not attempted a major invasion in more than 2 decades and that remains only partially tested against modern drone warfare, such a fight would be far from easy. Like, Iraq is the best case scenario, right? Iraq is the best case scenario. And even then, week after week, many of you are too young to remember this. And I certainly was, kind of young as well. But I remember, reading about it afterwards and also learning about it in the time frame and while it was happening, that there were mistake after mistake after mistake. There were mistakes upon mistakes being committed because that's how war is. Okay. And that was the best case scenario. Iraq did not have the solid fundamentals that Iran has. And even then, there were issues. In short, Iranian commanders would aim to draw the United States into a long and bloody war of attrition, and they would have the terrain and urban density to do it. Some will argue that the past is not prologue, that the Iranian regime is unpopular and therefore unlikely to inspire serious resistance. It's telling, however, that American bombings have yet to create fissures in the regime, nor has the American air campaign inspired the Iranian people to revolt. On the contrary, all available evidence points to regime consolidation and the closing of the gap between public sentiment and elite opinion. Then, 2, critics underestimate the power of nationalism, particularly in the Iranian case, the rally around the flag effect. The well-documented tendency of citizens to unite behind their government in wartime was most clearly demonstrated in Iran after Saddam Hussein invaded the country in 1980, a move that ultimately consolidated the very regime the Iraqi dictator had hoped to topple. That was our doing as well, by the way. Even under the most ideal circumstances of state collapse, like those seen in the early days of George W. Bush's Iraq War, a post-invasion insurgency in Iran would be all but certain. Between the most fervent supporters of the IRGC and with the potential backing of Shiite militias across the region, it would not take many committed fighters to prolong the conflict. As Washington learned in both Iraq and Afghanistan, even a relatively small but determined insurgent force can sustain a war for years. That force could draw from an estimated fit-to-service population in Iran of 41 million, plus the larger Shiite sphere, including warriors from Iraq, Bahrain, Lebanon, and Pakistan, among others. Much like Iraq and Afghanistan, the defeat of the Iranian army would be a fleeting victory, assuredly followed by a bloody and open-ended slog with an insurgency. It's far more consequential and far worse than the Taliban, who, by the way, I don't know if you guys have been looking at the numbers on the board, currently rule Afghanistan after 20 fucking years of occupation. Fantastic. This time it's even worse, though. Finally, an American escalation into a conventional ground invasion would deepen the already daunting regional crisis. I will say, by the way, straight up, removing all troops from Afghanistan has played a major role in diminishing American capabilities. I will say that. Like, withdrawing from Afghanistan completely, which was ironically Trump's plan to begin with, and withdrawing from the air bases as well, has made it so that Iran has no one in their other flank that could prove to create a supply chain. So there is that too. JD Pondon, trust the plan, folks. What is this? Your speculation about the internal dynamics?
What is your reporting about the dynamics in the White House? Yeah.
The other day I was talking to Daniel Davis, who's career military, and he was supposed to be one of Tulsi Gabbard's deputies in this administration. And then Republicans and the Israel lobby went ballistic because he had been a critic of the Gaza war and had said critical things about Israel. And there's a career decorated military officer, and he was going to be put in the position of presenting the presidential daily brief to Donald Trump. This just happened right at the beginning of this Trump administration. So then they withdrew his nomination. So Daniel Davis would have been, a real voice of kind of objectivity and independent thought, but also, a longtime military thinker. And he was saying that he still maintains contact with some people. This was just recently I spoke to him, that he maintains contact with some people. He said there's only like a handful of sane people left in the inner circle when it comes to anything having to do with national security or specifically with this Iran, and that there's a vibe that anybody who sort of speaks up, it's not welcome to sort of be giving contrary views. It's that you're going to be viewed as disloyal. It's like you're in a kind of authoritarian dictatorship and you're like afraid that Honecker from the Democratic German Republic is going to like oust you if you say the wrong thing. That's totally sort of counter to the idea that when it comes to sensitive issues like waging war, especially this kind of war based on nonsense, that you don't want critical voices. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is the embodiment of what happened to the isolationist wing of the
the primary reason why Iraqi invasion succeeded wasn't due to Iraq being unprepared, but because the Republican Guard and the army had conflicting plans on how to respond to the invasion. That, but also on top of that, they literally bribed generals, man. The American CIA was already in there in a way where Mossad and CIA is not inside of Iran. They literally straight up bribed the generals to surrender ahead of time. Like, that's it. They were bloodthirsty monsters, these neocons that invaded Iraq, that invaded Afghanistan. They were bloody, they were disgusting, they were animals, but they were competent. Okay? America has that same ambition of waging war and destabilizing entire regions and killing possibly millions of people by way of sanctions and by way of direct combat casualties. But they're also incompetent. They are incompetent. That's it. And not only are they incompetent, but after 20 years of defense bloat, enshittification has clearly hit our military as well, in ways that even I could not have foreseen. I'm not exactly a fan of the American military, as you guys know. I'm a very outspoken critic of American imperialism. But I always thought that I had a fairly sober assessment of our military capabilities. I thought that there was a likelihood that American military was a paper tiger, but I did not think it was this big of a fucking paper tiger. Okay? Straight up. The first indication that maybe we were not cut out for this happened in Russia, when Russia invaded Ukraine. People presented that as a fantastic success. For 5% of our military budget, we are able to destroy 50% of the Russian military forces without a single American active duty service member dying in combat. That was what Lindsey Graham said. That's what Elizabeth Warren said. And yet Russia hardened its positions on eastern Ukraine and now have permanently annexed many territories in eastern Ukraine with no end in sight to that conflict without completely ceding that territory to Russia. Okay? It didn't work. The Ukrainian counteroffensive failed with all the Western backing that Ukraine got, targeting capabilities, endless amounts of munitions. It was very clear that the Western world could no longer engage in proxies with a country like Russia, engage in a proxy war with a country like Russia where they would reach a level of success. That was the first indication that America wasn't as powerful and the Western world wasn't as mighty as we once thought it was. When you got a country that's crazy enough to fight back, when you got a country that's crazy enough to cut through militarily. But this is something totally different. Billions of dollars lost. Are you dumb? What do you mean? Ukraine is still holding against Russian imperialism? I know. But the goal wasn't permanent military annexation of eastern territories by Russia. The goal was a complete cessation of Russian forces, purging all of the Russian forces off of Ukrainian territory, and maybe even taking back Crimea. Crimea is completely gone, and now the calculation is shifted to a de facto and de jure recognition of annexed territories. You understand that, right? That's not a fucking success. That's not a success at all. I'm not talking about the morality. I'm not talking about the morality of Russian actions. Russian actions were immoral. Russian expansion, Russian irredentist actions are totally immoral, totally unacceptable. I'm looking at this from an amoral perspective. If I'm looking at it just like analysis between two different planks, two different poles of power in the world fighting against one another, it was not the military success that Western countries thought it would be. Immoral? The fuck is immoral? I mean, nation states do not engage in morality, obviously. I noticed you didn't object to calling Russia imperialist. Curious? Yes, because it's not technically imperialism, it's irredentism, but it doesn't even fucking matter. It's all the same. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's unjustifiable. But illegal, immoral, and unjustifiable acts can still be a strategic success for the ambitions of a country that is not in the orbit of influence of the Western world. This is something totally different, though, because this is direct American military intervention failing to defend American military assets, failing to defend American bases and American security partners. Okay? After billions and billions of dollars of investment into the United States of America from petro-capitalist states that obviously want to diversify their income portfolios and diversify their economy away from being like single resource countries, countries that need a steady flow of both tourism and expats to come in and even work in their extraction industries. These countries have to be safeguarded by American security cooperation. America has left them behind. It's unbelievable. That is like the totality of that is like trillions of dollars of investment, trillions of dollars of assets in general that America has left behind at the behest of Israel. It is nutty. It is unimaginable. There's a reason why we didn't do this for 47 years. You think Israel and America weren't worried about this calculation of a sovereign Iran that can easily control the Strait of Hormuz and do exactly what they're doing now? That's the reason why we did the Iran-Iraq war. That's the reason why we sent in the Iraqi Ba'athist forces into Iran to try and destabilize the country, to try and overthrow the Ayatollah. It didn't work. It failed. But we didn't stop there. And now you have a complete failure, a spectacular failure as America goes up the escalation ladder, potentially with boots on the ground. That, I suspect, will lead to American demise, complete collapse of American empire. Finally, an American escalation into conventional ground invasion would deepen the already daunting regional crisis. Deploying ground troops in Iran would provide an ample opportunity for America's great power rivals, Russia and China, to drain Uncle Sam of blood and treasure. So far, the pair have yet to expand their assistance to Tehran beyond diplomatic and intelligence support. But the presence of American forces on Iranian soil would provide Moscow and Beijing with a tempting pressure point against a superpower that is already overextended, indebted, and domestically fractured. Iran then could become a bloody site of great power competition. If China flips the script and turns Iran into their Ukraine to engage in a proxy war against the West is done. If we can see it here as a bunch of unaffiliated outsiders, if I can read the tea leaves as a 34-year-old American political commentator with a fucking Twitch stream, what the fuck are American generals doing? That's why I jokingly said American generals would probably do like a fucking a general's coup similar to Adolf Hitler before they would allow this to happen, but who knows? Given the totality of Iran's geography, demographics, military capability, and geopolitical connections, the prospect of an American invasion of the country should be unthinkable. Yet Trump's ill-considered decision to launch the war, coupled with his vague but ambitious goals, has made this impossible scenario a military possibility. Given the horrific costs of such an invasion would entail, however, Trump should choose a different path, declare quote-unquote victory, and de-escalate. That's my argument as well. That's what I'm urging America to do as well. I said this yesterday. America has shown that they are a paper tiger, okay? Mao Zedong might have been right, maybe too early, but America has shown itself to be a paper tiger, okay? Decades ago, Chairman Mao Zedong foretold that the United States' numerous overseas military bases were a noose that the United States had fashioned around its neck. He said that the world's people, including Americans who were victims of imperialism, would band together to oppose it. The United States has set up hundreds of military bases in many countries all over the world. China's territory of Taiwan, Lebanon, and all military bases of the United States on foreign soil are so many nooses around the neck of U.S. imperialism. The nooses have been fashioned by the Americans themselves and by nobody else, and it is they themselves who have put these nooses around their own necks, handing the ends of the ropes to the Chinese people, to the peoples of the Arab countries, and all of the peoples of the world who love peace and oppose aggression. The longer the U.S. aggressors remain in those places, the tighter the nooses around their necks will become. This was a speech at the Supreme State Conference on September 8th, 1958. Imperialism will not last long because it always does evil things. It persists in grooming and supporting reactionaries in all countries who are against the people. It has forcibly seized many colonies and semi-colonies and many military bases, and it threatens the peace with atomic war. Thus, forced by imperialism to do so, more than 90% of the people of the world are rising or will rise up in struggle against it. This is the part that I think Mao was wrong on in his assessment. He believed that people would be wise enough to rise up in real time against American imperialism in all of the different places. But this is not dissimilar to what I always say. 800 military bases can very quickly turn into 800 military occupations. Remember, without soft power, as Donald Trump has moved away from soft power initiatives, defunding U.S. aid, and moving into a completely hard power style of American imperialism, what did I say? 800 military bases can turn into 800 military occupations very quickly, and no country on the planet has the capacity to wage war on 800 different military bases. Something that I've said over and over again, and we've seen that happen in the Gulf. We saw that happen in the Gulf. And it happened in 12 fucking days. And it's continuing to happen. So much so that we pulled our THAAD missile systems out of South Korea. Yet imperialism is still alive, still running amok in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. In the West, imperialism is still oppressing the people at home. The situation must change. It is the task of the people of the whole world to put an end to the aggression and oppression perpetrated by imperialism, and chiefly by U.S. imperialism. That was in an interview with Xinhua news agency correspondent on September 29th, 1958. And in 1946, Mao talked with an American correspondent, Anna Louise Strong. To start a war, the U.S. reactionaries must first attack the American people. They are already attacking the American people, oppressing the workers in democratic circles of the United States politically and economically, and preparing to impose fascism there. All reactionaries are paper tigers. In appearance, the reactionaries are terrifying, but in reality, they are not so powerful. From a long-term point of view, it is not the reactionaries, but the people who are really powerful. Video is 145K since posted yesterday. What is this? I said American imperialism is a paper tiger, and now the whole world knows we must retreat from endless military incursions, focus on diplomacy while rebuilding our country, and allow nations in the periphery to have dignity and sovereignty immediately. One day, I wish that this will be the resilient attitude of the peoples, both in the United States and all around the world. Read Combat Liberalism. Mao is specifically calling you out on that one. Brother, as someone who who has read a decent amount of Mao at this point, why in the ever-loving fuck are you comparing a country that was in the grip of war, led by fucking warlords, regional territorial warlords, and numerous Western colonial superpowers, that was comprised entirely of a peasant force? And even then, where the CPC had to coalesce around the much more popular KMT, the nationalist forces, in an effort to wage war against another imperial power in the region that was dominating it and doing the Holocaust, Chinese style, Japan. How can you make a comparison between the material conditions in China during the Sino-Japanese War versus 2026 United States of America? You might have the brain of a Chinese peasant. Probably not, though, because the Chinese peasant understood the situation a lot better than you understand your current predicament. Okay? But you are utterly delusional if you think that there is anything that resembles a Maoist ideology in the American heartland. You can LARP to the best of your fucking ability. But if you cannot apply Marxist orthodoxy to current material conditions, you are nothing but a LARPer. You are no different than Pete Hegseth in that regard. He might be a reactionary. He's a LARPer nonetheless. He thinks if you say slurs and be anti-woke, you will dominate all of your opponents. You do the same. You do the same with the banner, with a red banner instead. It's idiotic. Please stop. Behave like a fucking adult and learn to read the fucking room. Learn to analyze your current material conditions. As a matter of fact, that's what the Chinese did, and that's why they were so effective in developing their country. Marxist-Leninism is not one size fits all. And if you are a Maoist of any sort, if you're abiding by Maoism as your principled ideological stance here, okay, you have to understand that the most successful Communist Party formation in the world right now was able to analyze the current material conditions and adopt accordingly to said material conditions as a Marxist-Leninist movement. China is what I'm referencing. What about the Black Panthers? Oh my God, brother, please stop. Best analysis so far by Mersheimer.
On U.S. bases and ports.
Two of my goats talking to one another.
It's humiliating.
Holy fuck. Chris Hedges has 1 million views on this with Mersheimer. Oh my God. Americans are awakening to the reality. I never thought I would see the day where two of my goats are talking to one another. Two of my goats are talking to one another and millions are listening. Oh my God. Instead of Professor Jiang, this is what you should listen to.
Defeat would potentially mean the end of U.S. hegemony in the region. Joining me to discuss the war in Iran is Professor John Mearsheimer. He is the R. Wendell Harrison Distinguished Service Professor of Political Science.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
At the University of Chicago. Professor Mearsheimer, who graduated from West Point and was a captain in the...
The weakness of modern leftist analysis is that we haven't seen revolution from within the imperial core. We need to innovate, not only just rely on the history of revolution. I agree. That's what I'm seeking to do. I also think it's important to interpret the failures, the many failures of revisionism in the Western world, in Latin American countries as well. Not just simply to say, well, American intervention was too domineering, too powerful of a force, and therefore it didn't work. Okay? There's also that aspect as well.
Air Force is the author of numerous books, including Conventional Deterrence, Nuclear Deterrence, Ethics, Lydell Hart and the Weight of History, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, The Israel Lobby.
By the way, The Israel Lobby is currently the bestseller on Amazon, which I thought was really funny.
And U.S. Foreign Policy and Why Leaders Lie, The Truth About Lying in International Politics. Let's begin with this fact that the Pentagon for 3 decades has vigorously fought back against Israeli pressure to go to war with Iran, whether that was Obama, Bush, Biden, and for some reason, for all of the reasons, of course, that are now evident, the Pentagon didn't want this conflict. How was that reticence or resistance overcome?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, Chris, that none of Trump's predecessors took the bait when the Israelis tried to trap us into going to war again.
Why are you, this is so funny, why are you believing the tail wagging the dog recently is a question someone asked. They're referencing the endless argument. Why are you warming up to the tail wagging the dog lately? Okay? Because I live in reality. And as new information is presented, I change my analysis. You must also live in reality because the tail is wagging the dog right now. That doesn't mean that the dog is not excited about the tail wagging itself. Okay? The dog is certainly enthused. But ultimately, the tail is wagging the fucking dog currently. Israel is in the driver's seat. I've explained this over and over again. And Israel has never been more in control of American foreign policy. Israel has never been more in control of American foreign policy than at this level, okay? And that is because for fucking 47 years, America has been at quote-unquote war with the Islamic Revolution. Since the Islamic Revolution, America's been at war with Iran. Why did they never do this? Because the tail was never capable of wagging the fucking dog. It's that simple. Every single time this has happened time and time again. If you think Israel didn't have an endless appetite for this kind of thing over the years, you would be wrong. You'd be delusional. Of course they wanted to do this. They've always wanted to do this. They've always urged America to get involved in this scheme, this devastating scheme. Okay? And as someone who has understood Mearsheimer's analysis and has leaned into it quite a bit about the power of the Israeli lobby, okay, I have still maintained the position that this is in America's material interest. This is a very different reality we live in now. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. New information comes in and you have to reinterpret events as it stands. It's over. The notion of the unsinkable aircraft carrier is gone. It's over. Because if you look at the region right now, if you look at what's going on right now, I mean, you can come to that reality very quickly, right? 47 years of this, and Americans' outright refusal, which Mersheimer will talk about right now. But the unsinkable aircraft carrier is utterly meaningless if the regional actors that it's supposed to control are gone, are destroyed, or on the verge of destruction. What do you think happens to the petrodollar if there's no more petroleum extraction in the fucking region? It's over. This is not simply a misstep by American generals. They're straight up sleepwalking to the death of empire right now because Israel has deluded them into thinking that they could do this. It's done. And not a single competent person that even wants to defend American hegemony is saying we got to put an end to this right now. The Democrats are not even doing that. You must ask the question why they're not doing that.
Against Iran. And you want to remember in 2024, Joe Biden's last year as president, the Israelis twice, once in April and then second in October of that year, tried to trap Biden into going to war against Iran. And he refused to do it. And Trump is the first president who fell into.
Brother, we've been telling you the tail was wagging the dog for 2 years and you called us conspiratorial anti-Semites. Take your fucking blinders off. Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but like Israel's genocidal campaign's impact on America was marginal, right? America clearly had the ambition, didn't care. Biden was allowing it to happen, and so was Donald Trump, because it didn't have the same kind of impact of waging war with Iran. Because the Palestinians are quite literally, unfortunately, if you're going to look at this with sober eyes, the Palestinians are, whether we like to admit it or not, incapable of militarily opposing Israel. They're just not. They are a hermetically sealed population that has been held captive by the apartheid state for generations. Okay? So yes, there is a difference between America continuing Israel's genocidal campaign upon the Palestinians, allowing Israel to blow up Lebanon, allowing Israel to take over militarily different parts of Syria. All of that actually played a role in Israel basically designing the battleground and claiming to America that Iran is too weak. This is our best opportunity. This will be the best opportunity in 47 years that we'll ever get. Not realizing that it wasn't the best opportunity at all. But until America actually said, you know what, fuck it, we ball. Let's go in. Let's blow up Iran. Let's decapitate its leadership. Let's force them into a fucking corner where they have no other option but to fight their way out of it and completely collapse the energy markets around the globe. Until this very moment, it was valid to say the only reason why America has this incredibly complex, incredibly pervasive web of influence in the Western world is because it was the unsinkable aircraft carrier. Until this very moment, you could have said that because the impact to the Western world was marginal. This is a different dynamic. I've said this over and over again. The last time America had the reins over its Middle Eastern policy was Barack Hussein Obama. And then Trump came in and Trump said, all right, Israel, go ahead. You do whatever you want to do. We'll follow along. Okay? That's what happened. But it still wasn't as impactful as this very moment. This was the final fucking shoe to drop. This is it.
The trap. And of course, he did it last June during the 12-day war. You want to remember in the 12-day war, the Israelis by themselves started that conflict on June 13th, and it ended on June 25th. But on June 22nd, we bombed 3 nuclear targets in Iran. But it was a one-day bombing. We talked about one and done at the time, and you remember that when the evening came on June 22nd, the bombing was finished, President Trump declared victory. So although he got involved for the first time, it only looked like he was putting his ankle in the water, that he wasn't becoming deeply committed to fighting a war in Iran. But that all changed on February 28th. The United States and Israel together, what I like to refer to as the tag team, decided to attack Iran. And we are now in a war of attrition with the Iranians, in which case it's hard to see how this war ends. So Trump took the bait. And I think to put it in more specific terms, I think basically that Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been working overtime for decades now, literally decades, to get the United States to attack Iran for Israel, finally succeeded with Trump. As I said, there was a tiny step taken forward in that regard last June. But now Trump has jumped full body into the water.
Yep. And this is the OG tail wagging the dog guy. Why is he also agreeing with me, saying this time is different? Like, I've always maintained the position that it's both, right? If you have the unsinkable aircraft carrier theory on one side, which is Israel, right, in a resource-rich region, and you have the Israel lobby and its pervasive influence on the other side, I've always been a fucking extreme fence-sitter centrist on both. I think one cannot exist without the other, unless you literally believe that, like, Jews have hypnosis capabilities, right? Like, they don't. You could not have such a complex web of influence in the Western world without being the warrior country that is going to dominate all these other regional actors at a moment's notice and be able to overtake Egypt if they need to do so, like they did in the past, and control the Suez Canal at the behest of Western states. An espionage. A country with espionage capabilities that are super fucking brilliant. They're awesome. Mossad is the greatest, right? A country that has been able to do all of this stuff. Only then, after they have made themselves so valuable and so irreplaceable to Western imperialism, could they actually slowly but surely build a sophisticated network of influence peddling, unlike anything that people have seen ever before. And now they're cashing that. Now they're cashing it in. Okay, they realize that their influence peddling capabilities are diminishing in the Western world because of the last 2.5 years of genocide, and now that their influence is waning in the Western world, they're like, we got to cash it in. One last big hurrah! We have the reins. We control American foreign policy in this region. Okay. We control the reins of American foreign policy in this region. We have controlled it since Trump won. Now we're going to do the unthinkable. Are you saying a U.S. aircraft carrier was sunk? No, man. There's two competing thoughts when it comes to analysis of Israel amongst anti-Zionists. One is the unsinkable aircraft carrier theory, saying Israel as a nation state is basically an unsinkable aircraft carrier. We say that about the Philippines as well, right? The idea that Israel's value for America is actually infinite because it's an important military installation in the middle of a resource-rich region. So if these regional actors do not operate at the behest of American imperialism and Western imperialism, as they have done so at times, Israel can come in and, whip them into shape, destroy them militarily, destroy them through espionage, and just keep them in control. Because there's no complete assurance in the eyes of the Western world that the GCC, the Gulf states, are always going to play ball. Israel, on the other hand, will always play ball, is the assessment. That's one competing school of thought. I don't want to say who is like the most formative leader in this school of thought, because he may or may not have spent the last decade being butt buddies with a notorious pedophile. Okay? Then the other school of thought is the Mersheimer theory, the Israel lobby theory, as in Israel actually does not work in convergence with American interests. It actually diverges from American interests. And the only reason why they are able to push America into endless military quagmires is because they have an incredibly sophisticated network of influence peddling. They can buy politicians like AIPAC and numerous other subsidiaries. They can create advocacy networks inside of our institutes of higher learning. So all of the fucking new graduates are chock full of Zionist propaganda and under the belief, the false notion that like Israel is the most important, most consequential country on the fucking planet. I think it's both. I think it doesn't work without the other. One does not work without the other. That's my assessment. And throughout time, as new information has come and as America has actually allowed Israel to do the unthinkable, which is strike Iran directly and engage Iran in such a devastating fashion that Iran had no other option but to fight back. Okay? No other option but to fight back. That now we are in a totally new dynamic where Israel is controlling American foreign policy. I don't have any fear of saying that out loud. You know why? Because Marco Rubio has said it out loud. Because Donald Trump has said it out loud. Because Lindsey Graham has said it out loud. So obviously, it would be fucking idiotic for me not to recognize what they're signaling. Now, part of the reason why they're saying that is because they want to engage in ass covering, right? That's an exit ramp for them because they also have this ambition. They're also stupid enough to think that they can come out of this successful, right? Because yes, as chatters have pointed out, for 47 years, we have wanted to dominate Iran. We wanted to destroy Iran because Iran could at any given point do this, do what they're doing for the past 12 days, for the past 13 days. Okay? So I understand that like that is also an off-ramp for some of these Americans who have been agitating to do just this for the past 47 fucking years, right? So that if shit falls apart in a spectacular fashion and we pull the exit ramp out, we can just be like, yeah, it was those Jews that made us do it. And I think Republicans are you know, they're holding their cards close to their chest, but they're saying they could potentially flip. Okay? It could get far more anti-Semitic in this country far faster than you think if Americans actually pull out of this Iranian quagmire and then start blaming Israel for it, even though they also wanted to fucking do it. So it's a bit of both. But as far as the analysis goes, while there was plenty of ambition in the United States of America as well by some in the leadership to do just this, it is, in my opinion, idiotic not to recognize that the thing that tipped us over into doing the unthinkable is Israel. Having a much more pliant administration to Israel, much more pliant to Israel's demands, was the icing on the top, the cherry on the top.
Yet you see, even with this sycophantic head of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, every time he's trotted out in front of the cameras, he doesn't look very happy. I think the military foresaw, the Pentagon foresaw what is coming and is quite perplexed about how to deal with it.
I think that General Kane has actually behaved quite well here. You want to remember that when Trump came into office January of last year, January 2025, he fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, and he brought General Kane out of retirement. Kane was only a 3-star general. He wasn't even a 4-star general. But Trump liked him, and Trump made him a 4-star general, and he made him the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, given that he was in effect Trump's general, that he owed his position to Donald Trump, you would think that he would tell Donald Trump what he wanted to hear about going to war against Iran. But on the contrary, what Kane did before the war, this is before February 28th, was he made it very clear to President Trump that we did not have a viable military option. So when you say that General Kane, every time he's trotted out, looks very uncomfortable, I think that's true. And I think there's a simple explanation for why he looks so uncomfortable. He knew from the get-go that this one was not going to work out the way Trump and Netanyahu thought that it was going to work out. And he understands that he is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was the chairman when we entered this foolish war on February 28th, despite the fact that he had warned against it.
Is it too simplistic to say that Trump and Netanyahu naively believed that by taking out the supreme leader and some of the hierarchy, there would be regime change and the war would be over?
I think that's clearly the case with Trump. I think that that was the argument that Netanyahu sold to Trump, and Trump liked the argument. I think given what happened in Venezuela, he thought that we had the ability to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And when Bibi told him that the regime in Iran is weak and all we have to do is decapitate it and really hit hard on that first day.
This is literally just a perfect sequence of events. Like everything, all the cards were aligned so perfectly for this very moment. You have an idiotic administration hopped up on, grand dreams of engaging in military dominant warfare. You have a Secretary of Defense, now called a Secretary of War, that's also willing to wage this idiotic campaign no matter what the cost is, without ever thinking about how it might blow up in their fucking faces. You have a successful leadership change that took place in Venezuela with Dan Kane's obvious, much more competent military operation. Okay. That was a major reason, I think, that Trump was excited at doing the Venezuela thing again. But this time, the difference was Israel didn't want to do that at all. Because the reality is, I don't think that you could have actually found a more pliant IRGC to deal with if you were to take out the Ayatollah. Because they just do not understand how the Islamic Republic works at all. But also, Israel had no ambitions in a regime change at all. They wanted complete destabilization from the jump because they were much more sober in their assessment. They were much better in their analysis. They knew that this would be fucking devastating. They knew that this would be devastating for the Gulf. They knew this would be devastating for America as well. But they knew they could just keep throwing more bodies at the fucking problem until they just try and destabilize the Iranian government and create a failed state. The only miscalculation here was, in my opinion, the only miscalculation from the Israeli side was how much discontent they can actually foment, how much they can activate a popular mobilization on the ground with the Kurdish militias, maybe the Balochis, maybe some Sunni groups here and there, right? They were wrong on that assessment. They thought they had enough of a resilient propaganda apparatus inside of Iran that would be able to activate people, that would be able to mobilize people to create popular forces on the ground that you could steadily ship weapons to, right, in secret, so that, they could create a Libya-style condition in Iran. They were wrong on that front. I think part of the reason why they were wrong on that front is because of the last month's incidents. There's a reason why Iran is shutting off the internet inside of Iran, because they don't want any kind of fucking destabilization to take place right now. Okay? Hassan, why are you only now just turning against Israel? Are you overdosing on heroin? Heroin overdosing. Are you overdosing on heroin right now? Only now turning on Israel? While you were shitting in your diapers, I was yelling about Israel.
Day or two, that the regime would crumble and we would end up with a pro-American, pro-Israeli regime.
You were pro-Israel 5 years ago?
I think.
Sure, buddy.
Who was very successful at telling Trump that story. And Trump is not exactly surrounded by wise advisors.
Is that true? Man, Anon, you're my least favorite fucking baiter, dude. You know what? I'm not even going to fucking ban that other chat. I'm going to give you a week off. You annoy me more than anybody else in this fucking chat. You know that? You are the most annoying baiter because you do it from this way where you're you play the role of a stupid. And I've heard your voice in the chat far too many fucking times to know you know better. Okay? The other guy is acting brand new. You do the thing that pisses me off more than anything else. Oh, I guess he has a point. No, he doesn't. One of the first things I saw from you was the coverage of the Great March of Return in 2018. I know. I've been doing this for years and years and years.
Save for General Kane, who would tell him otherwise. So he fell into the trap. Now, Netanyahu's a more complicated case. One could argue that Netanyahu understood that a decapitation strike wouldn't work, that this would not be a quick and decisive victory, and that instead what he was trying to do was trap Trump into a long war, in which case
he did this.
Iran.
He did this. Oh, you guys are losers. Are losers. Kill yourselves. Durr, you guys are losers. The KKK guy goes, dang, you got to admit they low-key cooked you. My least favorite type of baiter. Okay? I hate this guy, which Anon is being, almost as much as I hate this guy, which the first guy is being, right?
Would be destroyed. In other words, Netanyahu understood that the regime would not fall quickly, but once we committed to fighting the war, we would have no choice but to see it through. And that's the situation that we're in now. So that's a possible argument. It's hard to know for sure whether it's true, but it's also possible, just having watched Netanyahu over time, that he too bamboozled himself into believing that the Iranian regime was fragile and that we could easily affect regime change. You know, he's been saying that for a long time, as you well know, Chris. And sometimes when people repeat particular arguments, after a while, they even begin to believe their own arguments, although they initially did not. So it's possible that Bibi fooled himself, or it's possible that he was just tricking Trump into getting into this war.
Yeah.
Well, the Israeli goal is different from the American goal. The Americans want regime change. The Israelis want to create a failed state. They want to fragment Iran the same way they fragmented and destroyed Iraq, the same way they turned Libya into a failed state. Those are very different goals.
I agree with that. But the Israelis don't advertise that fact. I think the Israeli view is if they got regime change and they got a pro-American / pro-Israel regime in place, that then they wouldn't have to worry that much about destroying the country. But I think that they probably understand that that's not going to happen, that Iran's not going away. And given that Iran...
Chatter saying they sound like you. Brother, who do you think also plays a formative role in my analysis? Yes, these are the men, okay? Sometimes I even have the pleasure to be able to interview them. Yeah, no shit.
Going away.
I sound like Mersheimer.
Let's wreck it. Let's do to Iran what we did to Syria. And then we're done with Iran. We can turn to Turkey and break Turkey apart as well.
Well, let's talk about a country that does have a strategy, which is in the United States, and that's Iran. And what I found interesting is that rather than confront the American military might, i.e. the ships, and they have decided quite astutely and quite methodically to destroy the economic machinery, not only in the Gulf, but globally.
Yeah, the Iranians are pursuing a smart strategy. And to go back to General Kane has made a number of comments about the Iranians that make clear that he respects their ability to strategize in this war. He is not contemptuous of the Iranians. When you listen to Hegseth and Trump talk, they talk about the Iranians like they're a bunch of country bumpkins and we're the strategic geniuses. And not only do we have an advantage in material power, we Americans have an advantage in how to think strategically. I think that's not the case. And I think if you listen carefully to General Kane, he's making that point. We are up against a formidable adversary. Given what you said, given what General Kane said, they have a lot of cards to play. The key here, Chris, is that Iran has a huge arsenal of short-range ballistic missiles and drones that it can use against the Gulf states. And the Gulf states present a target-rich environment. It's easy to use those drones and those short-range ballistic missiles to do great damage to all of the countries in the Gulf, including Saudi Arabia. The Iranians also have a lot of long-range missiles and also long-range drones that can hit Israel. Now, they've not done much of that up to now. It's very important to understand that in the 12-day war last June, the Iranians fought almost exclusively against Israel. They did not target American military bases in the region, and they did not target the Gulf states. In this war, they're targeting Israel, American military installations in the region, and the Gulf states. And in the first part of the war, up to pretty much now, they've concentrated mainly on attacking American installations and attacking the Gulf states. But they have announced that they are now beginning to switch the focus, and they're going to concentrate much more on attacking Israel. And they have the long-range ballistic missiles, and they have drones, which they can use to hit Israel. And the problem that the Israelis face, and of course this is a problem that the Americans face, is that we only have a finite number of defensive missiles that can be used to shoot down those incoming ballistic missiles. And even when we use those defensive missiles, they oftentimes don't hit the incoming Iranian ballistic missile. So we have this situation in the Gulf and in Israel where the Iranians have the capability to pound all of those countries for a long period of time. And there's nothing we can do about it. And in fact, as time goes by, our ability to shoot down those missiles, shoot down the drones, decreases. It doesn't flatline, and it certainly doesn't increase. It decreases. So the Iranians have a serious set of military options against us. And what this means, Chris, is that as we walk up the escalation ladder, and that's what we're likely to do if we can't find an off-ramp, and I don't think we're going to find an off-ramp. If we don't find an off-ramp, I think what we'll do is march up the escalation ladder. And of course, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump will say we have escalation dominance as you go up that escalation ladder. But I don't think that's true. I think the Iranians have powerful cards to play. And therefore, we are in a really terrible situation.
What does that escalation ladder look like? What will that mean? They're already carrying out virtually saturation bombing of Tehran.
Not yet. They're pounding Iran. There's no question about that. And they're pounding Tehran.
What is this? Breaking. President Trump has rejected an offer from Russia's President Putin to move Iran's enriched uranium to Russia in a deal to end the war. Details include in a phone call with Trump, Putin proposed moving... What the fuck? In a phone call, Putin proposed moving Iran's enriched uranium to Russia as a part of a deal to end the war. Securing Iran's 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium remains a top priority for the U.S. Dude, a lot of people just say, Ron, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say it. Fuck it. I'm not going to joke. I don't want to joke too much because there's a lot of people who will yell at me. Okay. If you think America is Zionist-occupied government, you haven't even understood where Vladimir Putin is at, is what I was going to say if I were to make a joke about this, okay? But it is very funny that, like, this is such a funny assessment, like, as though Iranian denuclearization is a priority at all. Like, it's like these guys are playing a very stupid song and dance. This is not a real concern. Wake up, please. Like, who is this for? Who is actually for? Who actually believes this? At this stage, who actually believes that the real concern from the Americans is the limitations on Iranian nuclear enrichment? Like, are you fucking stupid? 2016 should have shown everyone around the world that this was not the concern, okay? Because as far as accomplishing that goal, Barack Obama succeeded. There is a multilateral cooperative agreement, including China and Russia, in said multilateral agreement, alongside European allies, to completely defang the Iranian nuclear program. It was under complete control of the International Atomic Agency. International Atomic Energy Agency. It should have stopped everyone from ever talking about this as a serious objective of the Americans when Donald Trump ripped that apart. And even back then, just as Trump is known to do, he did not actually turn around and deliver a convincing strategy. He just said, nope, I don't want it anymore. Barack Obama did it. And therefore, I don't like it. Okay? It's not like he said, Iran, we have serious objections to the denuclearization agreement because Iran is not abiding by the good faith agreement at all. He briefly brought it up, but the International Atomic Energy Agency was like, no, they are. We literally have cameras. We have cameras in their refinement facilities. We know they're abiding by it. We sent investigators to the facilities. We know that they're still abiding by it, even after you ripped up the contract. Because Iran did. Iran, contrary to the way that American media covers Iran, and I've said this over and over again, regardless of its domestic repression, when it comes to foreign policy, Iran is so restrained. Iran has been one of the most restrained foreign actors. Iran was even more restrained than Russia was. Always. Restrained to a fucking fault. Restrained against the Israeli incursions, again, to a fault, and certainly foolish and naive to think that America would ever negotiate with them after America showed over and over again that they had no interest in negotiating with them at all. If anything, I think Iran, and specifically Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, believed till their final moments in the aircraft carrier theory rather than the Israeli lobby theory. Okay? That led to their own demise. Literally. Till his last moment, Hassan Nasrallah was probably sitting in the bunker with all of the fucking Quds Force generals going, you know, they won't do this. America will stop them, right? Nope. Securing Iran's 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium remains a top priority for the U.S. Trump has acknowledged for the first time that Russia is aiding Iran in the war. The U.S. position is we need to see the uranium secured, a U.S. official said. This is not about uranium. This is Vladimir Putin offering Donald Trump an exit ramp. This is Vladimir Putin being like, come on, we'll help you out. And Donald Trump is so much a flesh puppet of Benjamin Netanyahu that he's like, nah, we're going to keep going.
But they have not killed more than 1,500 people. I mean, it's terribly regrettable that they've even killed one person, much less 1,500 or whatever the number is. But they have not gone that far. The Israelis and the Americans have not gone that far up the escalation ladder. And in a very important way, there's evidence that the Americans are discouraged.
Why would Putin help Trump? Regional stability, leaning into a much more favorable bargain for Iran. This is very helpful because there's the other... Look, the day after this war ends, and I don't know how it will, but the day after this war ends, the capacity of American empire will have taken such a significant hit that no matter what happens, if the IRGC is still in charge, which for all intents and purposes, that's the most likely scenario, Russia and China will harden Iran into the bulwark of, I guess, like Eastern interests, if you want to call it that, if you want to put them under one banner. Because Russia is not communist, so I'm not going to say it's the communist flank, right? Like anti-Western interests. They will, and America knows this too, and it's like too late for them to get out of the situation in some ways. But this will, because I suspect that whoever is in charge of Iran going forward, and I say whoever because we don't know if the current leadership structure will exist. Israel might try to assassinate and successfully assassinate the leadership again, right? But ultimately, the IRGC seemingly will stay intact unless there is a complete fail state, right? And if the IRGC is intact, they will play ball with China. They will play ball. They've been playing ball with Russia already, but they will definitely play ball with China. They will get trained on Chinese weapons, and they will harden their protection over the region. China, I suspect, will use Iran to gain a stronger foothold over the Gulf states. By way of Iran, China will probably secure a cooperative agreement with the Gulf states. They've already, pre-October 7, they already had made inroads, right? They secured a peace negotiation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This could be a part of the reason why there was so much strategic restraint on the Iranian side. Because if you recall, I covered it at the time, China went into the region and said, you guys are done. You're going to make peace. Saudi Arabia and Iran are going to make peace. And they did. It was successful. And then October 7 happened, and that just kind of, bricked the whole process. This also goes along with China's lack of interest in emancipatory needs of the people. They don't give a fuck about the Palestinians, obviously. Let's be real. But they do want regional stability, and they do want more control or more influence over this, the oil-producing giants in the area. If American intervention in the region has only led to Israeli domination and unlimited bloodshed, and China presents a much more tolerant, much more peaceful approach as a massive superpower that's emerging from the American chaos, I think the day after this stuff is over, China will basically come in and say, we're hardening Iran and we're securing, securing a truly stable area. They can't do that without eviscerating Israel, by the way, just so you understand, because Israel will go back to playing a formative role in destabilizing the region at the behest of American empire if they have the capacity to do so. This is part of the reason why I say Zionism will most likely end in my lifetime. Okay? This is why I say it. Yeah, the Belt and Road Initiative will turn into the Belt and Ass Initiative.
The Israelis for going too far and too fast up the escalation ladder, because we understand that the Iranians have a second strike capability. The Israelis don't care that much because the Israelis.
This is the funniest. Wait, hold on. This is my favorite counter. Won't they just call China anti-Semitic? Oh no. What will China do if they're called anti-Semitic? Oh no. Brother, that shit don't even matter for a fucking Twitch streamer at this point in the United States of America. We're the only place where that had any mileage whatsoever. Stop Anti-Semitism is going to do a country ranking this time and put China at the top of the directory. And then they'll know.
Israelis want to see us get deeply involved in this war and destroy Iran. They'd like us to level every city in Iran, break the country apart. But Trump does not, at this point, want to go down that road. But I think what happens here, Chris, as we march up the escalation ladder, is that we target civilian areas. We end up killing larger and larger numbers of people. And furthermore, we begin to flirt with the idea of tearing apart Iran's petroleum infrastructure and maybe their desalination plants as well. We begin to really try to throttle the regime, to strangle it. And again, this involves not just simply killing people, which I think if you get desperate enough, you'll do. The Israelis, of course, would have no problem doing that. And ultimately, I think if we got desperate enough, we would not either. But again, the problem is we do those things, the Iranians will retaliate. If we go after energy infrastructure in Iran.
How does North Korea and China have such a great relationship with Russia, and Russia being polar opposite of ideology? Brother, what are you talking about? It's because just as the PFLP aligns with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and aligns with Hamas under the banner of anti-Zionism and the emancipatory need, okay, these countries have been forced into hardline allegiances because they are against American empire. That's it. Ideology doesn't matter when your primary need is ridding yourself of this incredibly, unimaginably powerful force that has dominated your interests for decades. The DPRK would not exist. We cut the country in half. You understand that, right? There's no such thing as North Korea. There's only Korea. But the reason why there is a DPRK and a Republic of Korea is because we severed the country in half. We wanted to set up a bulwark against the USSR, against the Soviets. Do you understand? So, of course, these countries are aligned with one another. What the fuck does one of the most anti-communist countries on the fucking planet, Iran, have to do with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? Why is an American socialist talking about the emancipatory needs of a country that has literally thrown socialists and communists in jail for years? Think. Because first and foremost, the primary need for these countries is sovereignty and dignity. And they will align with one another on those boundaries every single time. Because from their perspective, their enemies are far worse. The ideological differences can always be set aside. Then why are you defending them? I defend the peoples. I defend the sovereignty of nations in the periphery. I do not care about American imperialism. I understand, unlike many people in this community as well, many people in the imperial core, that in order to be an anti-imperialist, if you want to be an anti-imperialist, you have to recognize the need, the emancipatory need of nation states and their people. I also understand that this doesn't help the regular Americans anyway. American military conquest does not help the emancipatory needs of the American population either. Except Gulf sovereignty. What are you fucking... Oh my God, this guy is still back. Still talking about Gulf sovereignty. The Gulf nation states have no sovereignty. As long as there are American military bases in the Gulf nations, they don't have real sovereignty. You are finding that out in real time and yet still chirping at me. Same guy from yesterday. What sovereignty do the Gulf nation states have? Do you think they like being missile sponges for Israel? They were the ones who invited them. Oh my God, he's still... Bro. This chatter is doing the NATO argument while it's collapsing. Okay? That's awesome. This is an awesome attitude to have. Thank you. You should take this up with the Gulf regional leaders. You should take this up with the Gulf nationals in general and see how they feel about it. He's doing the NATO argument, but for the Gulf states, he's like, bro, you don't understand. Lithuania invited NATO. Okay, Hassan, the GCC can also work with Iran. I mean, it can. I genuinely think it can, especially if there's a different world power that is keeping shit intact and offering security assurances, that one not being America, but instead China. Or the Emirati nationals would probably support this chatter. Okay. The Gulf nation states are understanding that American security assurances mean nothing. It just means you are a missile sponge for Israel, for Israel's ambition. If you don't think that they recognize that calculation, you're not reading what they are saying out loud right now. Sure, they're mad at Iran for bombing their, country and ruining potentially billions of dollars of energy investments and trillions of dollars of investments they're putting in to make the Gulf this habitat for some of the worst cryptocurrency pedophiles, right? They're not happy about that. Tourism is gone. No more Andrew Tate in Dubai. However, they also recognize what triggered this, as it had not happened for 47 fucking years. Why did it happen now? Like, I hate this Orientalism shit. It's Orientalism? No, brother, you just fucking hate Iran, and that's what it is, okay? You have been deluded into thinking that the Gulf states being a slave to Israel and America is actually a far better outcome from them. But it's funny to say that not like 14, 15 days ago, but it's funny to say that after the Gulf nation states have turned into, once again, missile sponges at the behest of Israel and America, okay? That's a hilarious position to be in right now. Your advocacy would be a little bit more understandable, even if it was delusional back then as well, right? But it's so funny that, like, the closest association that Gulf states have, like direct association that Gulf nation states have had, is the UAE, okay? The United Arab Emirates are directly in line with Israel. They have been actively petitioning to increase Israel's influence in the region, so much so that even Saudi Arabia started getting pissed off at the UAE. Okay? Look at the United Arab Emirates. Is Israel protecting them? No. Israel does not give a fuck about any Arab whatsoever. The GCC could have a much easier time treating a sovereign nation in the region like an ally or potentially just a neighbor than they would being American missile bases, American missile sponges that will inevitably only sit there to defend the interests of Israel, Israel's expansionist ambitions. They also recognize that Israel doesn't give a fuck about the Gulf states at all. Even if they destroy the Gulf states, Israel still doesn't Israel still doesn't care about that. They literally benefit from a weakened Gulf.
The Iranians will go after more and more energy infrastructure.
Like, that also proves Iran will also bomb the whole region instead of focusing on Israel. Bro, you have a significant mental setback here, and I don't know how to reach this. I don't know how to reach across and like pummel your brain with the actual information that you should be seeing right now. There are American military bases on every single one of these fucking Gulf states. Of course, if America and Israel are bombing Iran, they are going to bomb back the fucking military bases. What country would say, oh no, we have to let these Gulf states continue fucking operating their American military bases so they can destroy the country with, better ease? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with your brain? Hamad Al-Thani. Qatar's previous emir, father of the current emir, Hamad bin Jassim. Did I get it right? Am I saying it correctly? Qatari cat, is this correct? Stop spinning. No, he's the former prime minister. Hamad bin Jassim bin Jabbar. I don't care. Stop wiggling. There's a new hate train coming from the dumb veterans of Twitch from American Dad. He's adding Dan Clancy. I'd have YouTube ready. Sure, whatever. This war in our region, like all other wars, will come to an end. But there are lessons and morals that the Gulf Cooperation Council states must draw from it. The most important of which is solidarity, alliance, and unity of word and stance. For there is now no alternative for the Council states but to establish an effective, real, and on-the-ground military security alliance akin to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in which Saudi Arabia plays the most crucial role as the largest state. Given the importance of the matter, the study and preparation for it must begin now, without waiting for the war to end. And for that, the Council states must, with determination and without delay or hesitation, transcend all the disputes between them in preservation of our shared interest to keep the Council strong and cohesive, to ensure the independence of its peoples and states, and to prioritize the general Gulf interest over the Qatari interests. We must not wait for the fighting to end either. Rather, the Council states should immediately begin establishing and developing an advanced, coordinated, and planned base of military and electronic industries among themselves, so that they can defend their peoples against aggression and preempt and deter any attacks targeting them before they occur. Our states possess the necessary geography, resources, and funds for this. Yeah, except they don't have the necessary manpower and the willingness to do this. Okay? And perhaps we can take the lesson from Iran, which, despite the siege, managed to develop for itself an advanced missile industry base, which, regrettably, it has bombarded our states and aggressed against them without right. And since the Council states did not start this war, nor did they want it in the first place, and were seeking a solution between the United States and Iran, our states must not bear the economic and political repercussions that will result from the war. Israel, as the one that ignited the spark of the war, must bear responsibility before us, before the world, and before the United States. Isn't it crazy how everyone is saying the same thing, by the way? The Gulf states are saying, America, you have to stop Israel. I'm saying, America, you have to decouple from Israel and actually regain control over the situation. Iran is basically saying the same. And yet, America's like, nah, this situation is great. Don't you know that we are going to actually bring about Armageddon, and Jesus Christ is going to come back on earth and wage war in Megiddo against Satan's forces? I'm a really smart guy, and this is what I truly believe. For this war was started by Israel to make itself the upper hand in the region militarily, economically, and politically, as it declares every day. Yeah, that's the other thing. Israel is also offering salt to the wound, insult to injury, by routinely fucking stating over and over again that this war has made Israel a superpower, not only in the region, but around the world, which is fucking ridiculous. They are not. You shut off the fucking money faucet. You no longer give Israel the protective cover that it has benefited from endlessly, and Israel becomes a much more restrained nation state. Okay? Israel, tiny country. Israel, size of New Jersey. Therefore, we in the Council states must stand as one front, whether towards Israel or toward Iran. For Iran will remain our neighbor forever, even though we differ with it and reject what it has done and is doing against us. And as a result, by the way, I'm sorry, but I do find this kind of mealy-mouthed bullshit to be really insincere when, like, they turn around and they say, like, oh, how could you have done this to us, Iran? We are your neighbors. It's like, bitch, you have American military bases with American radar installations that protect Israel and American military bases that have American fighter jets that would bomb Iran at the behest of Israel. What the fuck do you mean? You have American Marines. You have American military installed in your country. You have American espionage facilities installed in your country that's spying on your neighboring country of Iran. What the fuck are they supposed to do? Of course they're going to fucking bomb those military installations. They're at war. This kind of like both sides bullshit is hilarious from the Gulf states. It's very sweet that they were benefiting from aligning openly with Israel, with the Abraham Accords over and over again, only to now do this woe is me bullshit like I am small bean. We are the small bean countries. We are the small bean petro-capitalists. How dare you do this to us, Iran? We mustn't wage war. We are neighbors. It's like, okay, well, why did you do the buildup to begin with? What the fuck were you expecting? This is why Iran hates Gulf more than Israel? No, it doesn't. Also, Iran... Listen, why is it that the nations that have been bombed the hardest are the ones who are not speaking as loudly in their condemnations of Iran? Ask the question why that is the case. Why is fucking France chirping harder and celebrating America's initial actions and also condemning only Iran, whereas the Gulf states are condemning Israel and Iran? Think. They're the ones getting bombed. France is not getting bombed. I mean, they lost one soldier in Iraq yesterday. But up until that point, their casualties were zero. Gulf states have actually lost billions of dollars. Why do they have a stronger approach? Why do they have a stronger statement for Israel for starting this than the French do, than the Italians do, than everyone else in the European nation states do? They're not being bombed. Think. Part of it is because, and I told you this over and over again, they also want there to be a sovereign Iran. They would much prefer a sovereign Iran than no Iran, than a failed state in Iran. 93 million people. Because they also understand that a sovereign Iran can at least keep Israel in check. They like that there's a defanged Iran. Iran no longer has the IRGC all over the region fighting against, the Saudi-backed militia groups. Oftentimes the Salafist groups, Al-Qaeda, things like that. But no Iran means no Iran in the region means Israel does whatever it wants. If it wants to take Saudi Arabia, it takes Saudi Arabia, and America will let it happen. Okay? They understand that. That's why they're saying Israel is also at fault here. Are you saying Gulf states shouldn't talk about Iran and tell it to bomb us more, lol? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that their calculation is different than those who are far removed from the conflict, even though their suffering is much greater, because they also understand that there's a day after. They have to live there. They have to live in the region. They can't park their assets elsewhere and fuck off. America can. They have to live with Israel being more belligerent. How do you not understand this? This is a calculation that they have to make. Anyway. Likewise, Israel is not far from us. Look here, therefore, we in the Council States must stand as one front, whether towards Israel or toward Iran. For Iran will remain our neighbor forever, even though we differ with it and reject what is done to us and doing against us, and as a result, consider an enemy of us today. A matter that our states must discuss and agree upon to determine the best approach for dialogue with Iran and what we accept or reject from its policies, so that our states do not become sacrificial lambs every time fighting or a misunderstanding erupts between Israel, America, and Iran. Likewise, Israel is not far from us, and we may need to reach an understanding with it, but not according to its declared policies, rather in accordance with the principles of good neighborliness that serve Palestinian rights in the occupied Arab territories and our shared interests. All of this calls for purity of intentions among the Council states and for the criterion to be the law, reason, and our shared interests, not personal and immediate interests under any circumstance or any reason. And I have no doubt about the intentions of the leaders of the Council states, but what it's required now is that we rise to the level of the historical responsibilities that these circumstances impose upon us. And what is surprising is that we have not heard a strong stance from several Arab states towards what the Council states are facing, as those states prefer to turn a blind eye and commit to neutrality. Oh, really? What about when those states were fucking falling apart, when the Gulf states turned a blind eye and committed to, neutrality? I'm sorry to say this, guys, but every single Arab nation has shanked one another at a different point. Okay? That's it. That's the reason. And it was all because they thought they could get an upper hand, and they thought things would remain stable as long as they were servile to the interests of Israel and America. Now they can't play that game any longer. That's it. That's why everything is fucking collapsing. Do you understand? The worst offender is obviously UAE, who doesn't even try to present themselves as a neutral party, but directly a servant of Israel. And what is surprising is that we've not heard a strong stance from other Arab states towards the Gulf. Yeah. Why is Iraq not saying anything is really funny. This is the reason why I think, depending on how the cards fall, the criticism of Israel you hear from countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and even the UAE sometimes is more about politics than it is about genuine concern from the leadership. In my opinion, their populations are anti-Israel. Their leaders are largely pro-Israel. So they do this song and dance while continuing normalization. Exactly. But now Israel has delivered a devastating blow to their actual economic interests. So the attitude has shifted dramatically. If you fuck up the money, if you molest the money, all of a sudden, the dynamic is very different. Because in the past, like Abraham Accords is fine. Like a pathway towards normalizing with Israel is like, from their calculation, fine. They can just like keep their population at bay while writing sternly worded letters about how Palestinian sovereignty is important to them. Meanwhile, they're doing under the table deals. They were already doing that before the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords was just basically a solidification of that normalized relationship, right? And Yahya Sinwar looked at that calculation and knew that the Palestinians were written out of that completely. And that's how October 7 happened. And I think Israel also knew that October 7 was going to happen, right? It's impossible for them not to know with all their surveillance capabilities. But they were so hubristic as to, they were demonstrating such hubris that they thought, oh, it'll be fine. We'll use this as an opportunity to finally fucking purge all of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and solidify our control over the West Bank and move on with our greater Israel project. And no one will stand in our way because this will give us the just cause to do it. And they made an error. Yahya Sinwar's error was that he thought that this would actually lead Yahya Sinwar's error was he thought that Iran would be backed into a corner and would not demonstrate the restraint that they did, because they would recognize that their regional assets will be destroyed in the process and they will have a much weaker position. So they'll be forced into action against Israel, doing what they're doing right now, but, you know, a couple months into October 7, right? That didn't happen. Hassan Nasrallah didn't commit to the same degree, and neither did Iran. And in the process, the decades-long campaign of building this axis of resistance was slowly but surely picked apart piece by piece with, you know, endless American munitions. I think historians in the future will look back at this moment as the pivot point. Almost the entire Middle East has been set alight. Yahya Sinwar's premonition of a regional religious war that would burn everything green and dry has come to pass. This is a real turning point, unlike Charlie Kirk's assassination.
In the Gulf, in Gulf states, if we go after desalination plants, they'll go after desalination plants in places like Saudi Arabia and Israel itself. I think the Israelis have 4 or 5 big desalination plants that they depend heavily on. And I think the Iranians will be incentivized to take them out if we, or the Israelis, or both of us, go after their desalination plants. So you can see that as we go up the escalation ladder, the Iranians will go up with us. And I don't see how you can make the case that we have escalation dominance in any meaningful way.
Yeah, this analysis is pretty sound. I read this already, talking about Yahya Sinwar and what the calculation was from his perspective.
Especially when you take into account the fact that the historical record is quite clear here that countries can suffer enormous amounts of punishment in these sorts of air campaigns, and the population does not rise up against the government and overthrow it. And in fact, what happens in most of those cases, if not all those cases, is that the population rallies around the flag. So if we think, or the Israelis think, that killing Iranian civilians is going to put pressure on...
This is the same shit Jong says, but because he says the Illuminati word, he's a crank. Yes, brother, exactly. Because his analysis is not backed by solid fundamentals. Yes. And if your analysis is not backed by a solid fundamentals, or anchored by like a understandable, decipherable worldview that still pertains to the material realities, and instead a whole bunch of hokum like Illuminati shit, then yeah, you're a crank. It's so ridiculous that there are still predictive history defenders here after he literally has said things like Jews are responsible for Islam, and that Iran is going to do Pax Islamica. He's like 90% of the way there. He's always like he delivers a very convincing response. His predictions actually are not that different from the things that I have said as well. But then the last fucking 10% of his analysis is fucking insane. You can arrive at a correct assessment while still, it's like Alex Jones, okay? Alex Jones is right when he said attack helicopters and people are going to get black bagged and put inside of FEMA facilities. He was right about that. Mass surveillance. He was right about that. But whatever the fuck he was anchoring his opinion off of was like lizard people, okay? And of course, that's the reason why in a long enough timeline, you watch him unwind and you watch him fucking come up with like insane, grand, fabulous conspiracies that are totally ridiculous.
On the government to quit the war. I think that is...
That's such an uncharitable reading. You've literally been catching up to Jiang. I've been catching up to Jiang, 31-month subscriber. You are literally getting mad at Jiang clips the same way people clip you. Oh my God. Oh my God, I have to purge this community of all of the fucking Jimmy Dore style freaks, please. Oh my God, I just need a whiteboard, I think. That'll be incredibly convincing for these guys. Maybe our community is actually kind of dumb. Yes, there are. Listen, this community is comprised of people that are heterodox thinkers, okay? Because socialism, communism, anarchism in the Western world is not a normal ideology that people share, okay? It's not the same as China, okay, where the norm is to be like, yeah, I'm learning about Marxist-Leninism in college. I'm living in a country that is controlled by a communist party. We live in the heart of capital. We live in the heart of capitalism, and therefore, a lot of people, if they don't anchor their worldview in dialectical materialism, end up finding themselves in the throes of cranks, okay? And this is a very large community that has, a lot of unorthodox values, and therefore some of them are finding themselves in the throes of the people who don't offer all of the soundest analysis. I admit he gets into crazy ideas in history class, but they are silly, but the analysis is good. Okay. I've been saying Jiang is like the Joe Rogan of Geopol, dumb guy, smart guy, and you collabing with him would unironically bring a ton of new people open to one-on-one radicalization. I mean, I want to talk to him. I've reached out to him because I want to understand like where he's coming from, because like from what I understand, yeah, like this one is crazy. He said Israel and Germany are going to be the great superpowers. America done. China done. The next great empires, Germany, Japan, Israel. Not because they're powerful now, but because they've been destroyed before. Humiliation is the greatest teacher in history. The nations that suffer the most are building the world that comes next. In a lot of these circumstances, like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of those Twitter accounts, right? It reminds me of those Twitter accounts that make predictions, right? Like a million predictions, and then delete the predictions that they made that look silly. Okay? Do you understand? Because the predictions that are made that are silly can always be deleted. Or in this case, if you have a faucet of videos that you're putting out there that are reaching like peak virality because all the right ones are reaching people's attention, right? Like Nick Fuentes does this very well too. Nick Fuentes one week will say Jeffrey Epstein was based, and the next week that he'll come out and be like, I'm done with Donald Trump because he's Jeffrey Epstein's slave. People see the first video, they don't see the second one, or people see the second video, they don't see the first one, and they go, wow, this Nick Fuentes guy is kind of based. People do this all the time, okay? I like his content. I think he's very entertaining. Can you steel man Jiang's argument about there not being enough evidence to prove that the Holocaust happened? I didn't even know that he had a fucking video where he was denying the Holocaust. One of the most well-documented atrocities on the fucking planet. That is insane. What? And you are exaggerating again? I didn't even say he has a video such as that. I'm just responding to what someone told me in the chat.
Of the Jewish race in Europe, okay? So we don't actually have any concrete evidence for the Holocaust, okay? So one piece of evidence for...
I knew there was something up when he said secret societies in the interview with Cristobal on Breaking Points. If I learned one thing this year, right,
I need to see the full video. As a person who watched Chong's lectures for hours, he's definitely cuckoo. If you watch the videos on religion and start a civilization, he equivocates religion and science. He's a master of mysticizing. He also does post hoc rationalization to readjust quite a bit after his predictions fail. I mean, I know he talked to Sneeko. He also talked to Richard Spencer. But like, I just thought that's because he's, you know, he's all over the place. He's just trying to get the word out to the best of his ability, and he's, you know, he's Chinese, so maybe he doesn't have internet, you know? That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, he probably don't have internet. Because, like, this is the same dynamic with, like, you know, the Bangladeshi unks, right? That I talk about all the time. The WhatsApp unks. They fucking love Nick Fuentes and they love Tucker Carlson. Because, like, they don't see the stuff that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson says about them. They only see the good stuff. They only see the stuff that they say about Israel. And they're like, oh, shit, this guy's brilliant. This guy's really sticking it to the man, you know? So for a lot of people, they don't see the full scope of the commentary, and they just see bits and pieces, and they just get stuck on it, and they develop like a lot of, I guess in some ways, like a parasocial association with this content. I don't want to do a takedown of Professor Jiang. I want to talk to Professor Jiang. I don't think he will talk to me because I have kind of called him a crank before, but it's just like, I know you were speaking as a hypothetical Nick Fuentes first-time watcher. Please clarify that you weren't saying you find Fuentes entertaining. I don't. I'm saying that other people only see certain clips, and then they find Nick Fuentes to be brilliant or entertaining or on their side because of the clips that they see. And people will say all these clips are out of context, except you fail to consider that I've talked to the people that have interviewed Professor Jiang. Shouldn't you know whether he's a Holocaust denier before asking him on? No. I'm competent enough to be able to have a conversation with someone if they say they're a Holocaust denier, to like ask them how the fuck they arrived at that conclusion.
There are different names for these people. You can call them like Illuminati. And the Illuminati are composed of three major groups, okay? You have the Jesuits, who control the Vatican. You have the Sephardim Frankists, which control the modern state of Israel today. And you have the Freemasons, which control the national security apparatus of the United States. And they believe that Israel, this war in the Middle East, is key to the end times in creating heaven on earth. So it's almost like a script that they're following, even though it doesn't make any geopolitical sense. Okay, so I would say that these three are the best reasons why this is happening.
Wow. Sagar. Wow. Oh, dude, I fucking love cranks so much. Cranks are the best, dude. They are the best. Where is the lie? No, it's all correct. Yes. No, you're right. It's the Frankists. It's the Rothschilds, brother.
I'm not sure if this statistic is correct. You can tell me if this is correct or not, right? But apparently 20% of all American white girls in their 20s are on OnlyFans, something like that.
Oh, like what the fuck? What's the number of white women in their 20s in the USA? Let's see what that number is. White women represent roughly 56% of the 18 to 64 demographic. Come on, give me just a fucking number, man. Why can't you just spit out a number? Oh, this skeptics website did the math. Okay. What is this? I have not been able to find reliable statistics supporting the claim that 1 of 5 white American women in their 20s are on OnlyFans, either as creators or as users. Available statistics seem much smaller. For example, some estimates suggest about 2% of American women aged 18 to 45 are creators on OnlyFans, which is far below 20%. The platform reportedly has around 2 million creators worldwide, with the majority being women. If the 20% figure were true, it would imply millions of young American women in that demographic are creating OnlyFans content. Bro, I was excited when I first saw him and was talking about using game theory for predicting the future. I thought he was going to actually do some game theory, and it was just his speculation based on a lot of unconventional but true statements. The game theory is just a scenario with interests of some of the parties he lists beforehand. It sort of makes sense to the listener who is primed into believing his sensational speculations. I mean, yeah, if what is anchoring his worldview is like Frankists that control Israel and Jesuits that control the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, of course he's gonna arrive at like some wildly speculative ideas as well. Please show chat what he means by Frank. Is he referring to an extinct Jewish heresy? Wait, why doesn't he believe in the Khazar theory? Frankism was a Sabbatean religious movement originating in Eastern Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. Created in Podolia, it was named after its founder, Jacob Frank. Frank completely rejected Jewish norms, preaching to his followers that they were obligated to transgress moral boundaries, embracing antinomianism. The Frankists were engaged in incest orgies and sex rituals, such as the infamous 1756 incident in Langstroon, where they were allegedly caught dancing around half-naked women, symbolizing the Shechnia. At his height, Frankism claimed perhaps 50,000 followers, primarily Jews living in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, as well as... Iran is considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, provided that the oil cargo is traded in Chinese yuan. A senior Iranian official tells CNN. Wait, what the fuck? Okay, let's do the OnlyFans clip. Let's finish that.
I'm not sure if you've heard this, but just the idea that you have a percentage of American white girls in the 20s all on OnlyFans, that's just incredible to think about, okay? And you know, like the people joke that that's what America wants to do. America wants to liberate Iranian women so that they can go on OnlyFans and enjoy American corruption and decadence, all right? So
the statistic says on Google that for women aged 18 to 24, roughly 14% are active on OnlyFans. So that's 18 to 24, right? Imagine it's probably 20% or maybe 30% if you go up to 35, 40 years old. And the percentage of these women that are white, it's about 70%. So, and that's the narrative you're hearing from the Trump people. They're saying, oh, look, the libtards are getting owned. And they're posting images of Iranian girls stripping free of their niqab, their oppressive niqab, and now they're naked, which is so ridiculous because it's the conservative right saying the libtards are mad that women are on OnlyFans.
Yeah. So again, OnlyFans, I think, is the best indicator of a society in decline, right? So the Roman Empire, when it declined, the main problem was that women refused to have children. And so everyone was freaking out, like, what can we do about it?
This is lower than the percentage of women in this age doing OnlyFans, according to a new study. What's the study, Ryan? What do you mean? The OnlyFans index.
They keep on the...
Professor Jiang says Islam was created by the Jews. I mean, Roman helmet guy is Professor Jiang, by the way, but of a different variety. So it's really ironic that he's mad at Professor Jiang when this is literally what Roman helmet guy is as well. Okay? He just does this for the Roman Empire. He's a crank as well, but for the fucking Roman Empire. The cranks are fighting amongst themselves.
And so they keep on the fight, even though they've lost the war against...
Why is the professor in quotation marks? Because he's not actually a professor. I think he's like an English teacher in high school in like Beijing. Yeah, he's not.
Romans, they will go into the Arabian desert where they will incubate a new religion called Islam, and they will prophesy the coming of the Messiah, who will turn out to be Muhammad, right? So at this point in history, the Jews must leave Jerusalem because the Romans basically kicked them out, and their religion will splinter into many different factions. And as we discussed, what will happen is those Jews who are most fanatical, they will escape into the Arabian desert and they will incubate Islam. And eventually, Islam will conquer the world. And at this point, they feel as though they've achieved...
Dude, okay. Everyone needs a Nation of Islam style theory. So Professor Jiang fills that void for people that are looking at the senseless bloodshed and trying to make sense of it, okay? Because, like, this is low-key, Dr. Yakub. Like, this is Dr. Yakub for swagged out white boys who are trying to make sense of why America and Israel are just, like, fucking dominating this region and pummeling it into oblivion, but refuse to base their analysis in any sort of like previous communist thought. I just want you all to know that no one knows who this guy is in China, and we're all laughing at you for listening to him. Okay, calm down. This guy is China's greatest mind.
The Messianic age, and they have returned to to Jerusalem.
I don't think he has any good takes, Law. No, he does. He does. He absolutely does. We're just looking at all the bad takes in a row. That's why it's like hard to defend. The reason, if you are wondering why so many people, even in this fucking community, are like actively trying to ride for Dr. Zhang, is because he does have a lot of viral videos that are like pretty on the money with respect to like American ambitions in the region and how it's like failing. So, well, Zhang is more popular than you on Bilibili, so I agree with that disagree with that former chatter.
Now, the Jews believe that in the Messianic age, the Messiah will come, lead them to victory, bring all the Jews back to Jerusalem, and build the third temple and usher in the Messianic age. Okay, and that's what they believe happened. And so this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and this is meant to be the third temple. Over time, what will happen is they will change it to become a center of Islamic worship. But in the beginning, it was really the third temple.
I cannot believe that I literally sidestepped away from two actual brilliant thinkers that have spent a lifetime, Chris Hedges being a investigative reporter that has broke incredible fucking stories, and Professor Mersheimer, who is probably one of the most important realpolitik academics in the country, to literally watch Professor Zhang clip compilations. We are a deeply unserious community. What the fuck is wrong with me? And what the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my God. We literally took this sidestep because someone literally said, Professor Zhang and Professor Mersheimer agree on everything. I'm so stupid. I'm going back to serious shit, please.
Erroneous thinking.
Well, we tried that in Vietnam.
We tried it in Korea. If you ever look at what we did to North Korea during the Korean War, it's horrific. It's much worse than what we did in Vietnam. And then you go back to World War I, World War II. Excuse me, not World War I, World War II in Europe and World War II in East Asia against Japan. I mean, the number of people that we killed is just hard to believe. But it's very hard, if not impossible, to get.
I remembered I have free will. That's what happened. So I could lock
those
in.
air campaigns to cause a government to quit.
Well, is there an example of an air campaign that does break a government? I don't think so. Historically, is there?
No, I think the only case you could make is the dropping 2 nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th got the Japanese to finally quit. The Japanese were at the edge of the cliff by August of 1945, and the question is what pushed them off the cliff. And some people would argue it was the 2 nuclear weapons on those 2 dates. I actually think that's not true. I think it was when the Russians came in on August 8th.
Yep.
Remember, the war in Europe is won on May 8th, 1945. And at Yalta, the Russians or the Soviets had said that they would come in 3 months after the war in Europe ended. In other words, they would come into the war against Japan.
I can't believe a 31 subscriber said, I'm just catching up to Professor Zhang's analysis. I'm sorry. Professor Mersheimer, I can't take you seriously. You do not have a whiteboard where you're overemphasizing certain words and talking about the impact of Frankists.
3 months after the war in Europe ended. And the war in Europe ends on May 8th, 1945. And 3 months later, on August 8th, 1945, the Soviets invade against the Japanese Kwantung Army in Manchuria and quickly overrun it. I believe that it's the Soviet decision to attack Japan on August 8th, which is in between the 2 bombs on August 6th and August 9th, that is the critical factor that gets the Japanese to throw up their hands. But that's the only case you can make where one could say that air power helped a bit to end the war. But just quickly, Chris, on that case, because it's important to understand it, we start firebombing Japan on the evening of March 10th, 11th, 1945. And the first night that we firebombed Tokyo, this is March 10th, we kill more Japanese than are killed at either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Just think about that. That's the first night we firebombed Tokyo. And then we're working our way down the list of large Japanese cities and firebombing them, murdering huge numbers of people. Just truly remarkable. And the Japanese don't quit. They don't quit until
Professor Mersheimer, what is your estimate on the percentage of white women at in their 20s that are doing OnlyFans?
August. And that, of course, is when the 2 nuclear weapons are dropped and the Soviets come into the war. And that's sort of the coup de grace. But firebombing just didn't work. And it supports the basic point that I'm making, that you can murder, and this is really murder because you're purposely targeting civilians. You can murder huge numbers of civilians, and it doesn't work. The historical record is remarkably clear on this. And here we are in Iran. We're not going to send ground forces in, right? We're going to rely on air power. We're going to bomb, and we're going to bomb Iran and win the war. We're going to create regime change without sending ground forces in. Just going to do it through the air. The historical record makes it unequivocally clear that this is almost impossible to do.
Yep.
Absent a miracle.
It's never happened. It has never happened. The closest association that you can make in recent history is Libya. And in Libya, you had popular mobilization of ground forces. So it wasn't the American military, but you had a popular mobilization. It has never happened. And it will never happen. That's not how things work.
Miracles. It's hard to get regime change, or impossible to get regime change using air power alone. You got to send boots. You got to put boots on the ground. This is what we did in Iraq. We had to invade Iraq to get regime change. And if you want regime change in Iran, you're going to have to invade that country. And that's not going to happen. Country's much too big. There are too many people. And furthermore, we've been there before. It doesn't work very well. And even Donald Trump is smart enough to know that sending an army into Iran would be a real prescription for disaster.
Let's talk about the economic impact of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, and just on the issue of desalination plants, having worked in Saudi Arabia, you take these out, you have a huge humanitarian crisis. I mean, cities like Riyadh are almost completely dependent on desalination.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
See, okay, going back to Professor Zhang, this is the type of shit that he says as well that is correct. He has talked about how the escalation ladder features America and Israel potentially hitting the Iranian desalination plants before it actually happened, and what Iran could do in retaliation, because anyone with like cursory understanding of the fucking region knows that, yeah, they don't have a lot of fresh water supply, and they rely heavily in Gulf nations, especially, even more so than Iran, in desalination plants. Obviously, Iran relies heavily on its desalination plants as well. But like, you know, it's stuff like that make him come across as brilliant, right? That's it. That's what it is. That's why people who didn't know this stuff, if they encounter it for the first time ever from him, they go, "Oh my God, this guy's fucking brilliant. I never thought about that before. I never thought that this like desert land required desalination plants to keep up a fresh water supply for its fucking population." Okay? And that's the reason why they developed this like loyalty to him. I guess I kind of eat off of that a little bit too, because like a lot of the things that I explained to you guys is also things that you're encountering for the first time ever. So then you're like, wow, this guy's fucking brilliant. Why can other people not see what I'm seeing? And if you see the right clips, you also come in and you tune in and you see this shit and you go, wow, this guy's actually really smart about me as well. Okay? Other people don't see that. They only see, because I have a fucking mountain of haters, unlike anybody else after, 10 years of fucking doing this. Other people only see bad clips or things that are clipped out of context. and they go, oh, fuck this guy. This guy's a fucking idiot. This guy's stupid.
And the administration, the Trump administration, has told the Israelis to stay away from desalination plants. And we do not want to get into a war where both sides are attempting.
Wrong. Iran barely relies on desalination, around 3% of total supply. It doesn't matter. It's still, they do rely on desalination plants as well. Nowhere near to the same fucking degree as the Gulf states, but they still do. When you say barely and you say 3%, which I don't think it's 3%, but do you know what happens when 3% of the fresh water supply is taken out? And it's regional too. There are areas where there isn't access readily available to fresh water supplies. Do you know how fucking insane 3% is? 3% in a 90 million country, especially if you're looking at the region that relies on it, is millions of people that rely on it for their fresh water. It's crazy. Especially if there's no adequate way to reroute fresh water supply in the midst of a heavy, intense bombing campaign. I love you, but your war analysis is horrible. Oh.
To destroy the desalination plants on each side. This would not be good because, as you say, it would be, catastrophic disaster for the people in all of those countries in the Gulf region. And I believe it would have devastating effects inside Israel as well if the Iranians were able to take out those 4 or 5 desalination plants that the Israelis have. So I think that, for the time being anyway, we'll stay away from that. The economic consequences, have not been fully felt yet. And we'll see what happens with the passage of time. Very interestingly, the Iranians are still shipping oil out of the Gulf. Needless to say, Iranian tankers or tankers carrying Iranian oil are not going to be sunk by the Iranians, and they can make their way through the Straits of Hormuz. So the Iranians are still selling oil.
Which I think 80% of their seaborne oil goes to China. Is that correct?
I think that's right, yeah. But I think that if you look at China's present situation in terms of, how much oil it has in reserve, where it gets its additional oil from, China is not going to be hurt that much, at least initially, if the oil is cut off. It's Japan and South Korea that are going to be clobbered. Japan and South Korea are more dependent on oil coming out of the Gulf than the Chinese are. It's quite interesting here, Chris, but if you think about it, the Europeans are really going to be hurt badly if the oil is cut off for a sustained period of time. And you want to remember, the Europeans are already in trouble because they're not getting oil and gas in the way they used to from Russia. And now they're depending more on the United States and the Middle East. So if you cut off the flow of oil and gas from the Middle East to Europe, on top of the fact that all that oil and gas coming out of Russia has been curtailed, you can see with the European economies, which are already struggling, are going to be even in more trouble. So Europe is going to be hurt. It looks like Japan and South Korea are going to be hurt. And then there are countries, that are less developed, like Nigeria, that are going to pay a real price as a result of what's happening here. So the
Dog, they're sending 2,500 Marines to Hormuz. How is it not a war now? First of all, it's been a war. We are now 13 days into the war. Secondly, what the fuck are 2,500 Marines going to do? They're just going to get fucking killed. And it's even higher than that. Yeah, we're sending 5,000 of our hardest dicked Marines into the region. They're going to seize control over Karg Island, okay? They're going to get deployed and they're going to take it over. And these are some of the hardest cocked Marines we have, okay? Their dicks are so hard. They say slurs. They say the best slurs. They know slurs that you've never even thought about, okay? And they're going to come in and it's like a COD mission. It's a Battlefield 3 map. They've already played Battlefield 3. They're ready for it. They're eating all the best crayons. They're eating all the best Blue Chew. Their cocks are so hard. Hoorah. They're going to be deployed, and they're going to take it out. This is insane. As I've described earlier, you need a far, far larger troop deployment than 5,000 to overtake even the not just Karg Island, but also the Iranian coastline surrounding Karg Island. And before you do that, you also need to completely eviscerate the Iranian missile launching and drone launching capabilities before you can even make this deployment. It seems like that would be the entry point up the escalation ladder. But ultimately, for that to continue, if you deploy 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 soldiers into the Iranian coastline to achieve any sort of like military success in overtaking the Iranian coastline, let's say you actually destroyed, like completely destroyed, maintain air superiority, completely destroyed their like anti-air defense systems, and have complete air superiority over the Iranian coastline, and you're deploying these troops into the Iranian coastline and also Karg, so you can take over the surrounding region. Okay, you still don't have you don't have a supply route that is clear that can directly feed into the front line. Okay, before you even establish a forward operating base, you need to do that. But let's say you did all that. Where do we go from there? Right? You can only maintain that position. It's not sustainable. You can maintain that position, let's say, for a limited amount of time. Like everything went super well. These are basically, these are the Terminator style Marines, and they just can fucking eat a Shahed drone in the face and survive somehow. Okay? How long can you hold that position? Iranian ground troops are deployed against you. Now you're fighting against them. How long can you hold it? What is Karg Island and why is it important? 90% of all oil that travels by sea goes through Karg Island. It's a tiny little island right on the coast of the Iranian shoreline, and all of the oil goes through Karg Island. It's unbelievable that they think this would look like anything different than sending some kind of destroyer to tow an oil tanker. It's even worse because now you have, combat casualties. All of the Iranian oil passes through Karg Island. But from that point onward, you have to increase the deployment, right? You have to increase from that point on, it's a full-blown boots on the ground military deployment, right? And then you run into the same exact problems that I've been explaining for the past month and explained to you earlier today. The Iranian topography, making it virtually impossible to fucking invade by land, the lack of supply routes to the front line, all of that comes into play. The 93 million people that live there, the areas, the population centers that are deeply nestled inside of these mountains. It's just impossible. It's completely impossible.
Damn, this guy's good.